I'd like to call to order City Council, City of Belton, budget review session scheduled today. We're going to receive the budget, proposed FY20 budget today. And with that, we're going to start off with the overview of personnel changes and proposed FY20 budget and all funds. Are you going to start out?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, just to go over a few items from the budget and the budget book, I'm going to just kind of recant some of the changes that are outlined there. The general fund receives all revenues that are not restricted by law for a special and specific purpose. Things like your water, your wastewater, transportation, park, those are specific items that would then go to those funds. So those don't go to the general fund. The general fund receives all revenues that are not restricted. And the specific purpose and special funds that reimburse costs that are paid from the general fund. All the services that don't have their own funding source that the city provides are funded from the general fund. The fiscal year 20 budget projects that the general fund will end the year with a 15% fund balance in reserves. This is in compliance with the city's ordinance. The general fund fiscal year 20 budget is balanced with $17.8 million of projected revenues and $17.5 million of projected operating expenditures. Additionally, there's almost $780,000 of capital expenditures budgeted. Revenues are projected to be flat this year, and if it weren't for the new half-cent public safety sales tax and the increase in the public works billing transfer to the general fund and the new ground emergency medical transport revenue that is provided to us for Medicaid purposes, the general fund revenues would not have grown at all. While most revenue streams are projected to increase, we're experiencing shortfalls and declining revenues in telephone franchise tax, ambulance billing, inmate care, and court fines and costs. Patient transports are down for the first 9 months of the fiscal year by 174, and violations, tickets, and arrests filed with the court are down by 715. We made a change to the calculation of the fund balance reserve this year. In prior years, all revenues coming into the general fund, including transfers in from other funds, were used to calculate the required 15% reserve. Beginning with fiscal year 20, a change has been made to exclude transfers from that calculation, as this is a truer representation of calculating reserves, thereby providing the one-time pool of dollars that you're seeing that we are applying towards capital purchases. 67.4% of the general fund is used to provide public safety services in the city. The general fund also provides funding for other important services like the municipal court, building inspections, animal control, emergency management, the municipal jail, and code enforcement, along with the support and administrative services that support all city services. 79% of the general fund operating expenses are salaries and benefits. As you'll recall when we discussed earlier this year, the general fund, basically in the city, we provide services, and that comes through the support of manpower. To begin, that's a brief overview of the general fund and where we're at with revenues and expenses. As stated, 79% of the general fund operating expenses are salaries and benefits. So since that's the area that has the largest impact to general fund, I wanted to go over and talk about what's included in this year's 2020 budget. First thing, you will remember that I've mentioned to you previously that personnel grade changes were done in accordance with the city's code, section 2-302, that we do a comparative study. And I provided that to you and details of that code in my budget letter. But basically it says that we'll do an annual study to review so that we can try to keep our salaries as competitive as possible. The personnel grade changes that were made due to the comparative study, and if you'll take a look at the board, the screen up here at the top, at the very bottom there, it says personnel grade changes due to comparative market studies. In all the funds, we have 218.5 positions. There are 173 grade changes. That would include if you have police officers. Chief, how many police officers do we have?
Wow.
39. So if that position changed, then that would be included in that number. So it's not just different positions, but it's the number of headcount that you have in those. So 173 grade changes, 55 and a half of those saw salary changes. In the general fund, there's 178 and a half positions with 135 grade changes, and 40 and a half of those saw salary changes. And in other funds, there's 40 positions with 38 grade changes and 15 salary changes. Total overall with that, the reason we did that was to we took a look at positions that, so the ones that you're seeing that basically had changes are ones that were previously or at the low end, and if they went up to a grade, they went to the base of that next grade. So if they were at a baseline and their next grade up saw a change in that low end, they would see an adjustment. In addition, there was also, we looked at each position and looked at the compression issues to make sure that we wouldn't have those concerns. Those were some of the things I recall Councilman Van Winkle actually talked to us about, to make sure that when we talked about doing the comparative study, we wanted to make sure that we wouldn't have some compression issues. As a result of that, there was a little over $181,000 in salary changes to the overall budget this year due to that comparative study. In addition, you'll see at the top of the page, Sheila, if you can go to the top there, personnel changes in this year. We're seeing a 2.5% cost of living adjustment that will be effective on March 19th and would be paid on April 4th, which is in the new budget year. And the reason that you're seeing a COLA is, in addition to, if you take a look 2 lines down, the one-step merit increase. And the reason that we are looking at a COLA is because this last year, staff did not receive any type of an increase, and so we were trying to keep pace with the cost of inflation. So in order to keep our salaries competitive, we have some departments currently where we are low in staffing, and it's because we are not competitive in our salary, and we knew that in looking at wanting to unfreeze those positions, which we've done in police and fire, we need to make sure that our salaries are competitive to try to hire best qualified candidates that we can. So we are seeing a 2.5% cost of living adjustment, and that will happen for all employees effective on that March 19th date, and then a one-step merit increase that's for all eligible employees on their anniversary date effective on April 1. That's in the new year. Health insurance premiums are budgeted an increase at 3.3%. You'll recall this last year. The reason why we were seeing a lower amount this year is that we actually had an 18% lock-in on our health insurance, so it's good through the end of 2019. And so we won't be hearing about what any type of increases would be until September, October timeframe, and that would only be an impact of about 3 months on the this year's budget, because those, if we see an increase, it would be effective in January. Our loggers rate increase budgeted at 0.4% for general, 0.6% for fire, and a full 1% for police. And then workers' compensation rate increase, we're looking at that overall, a budget of increase of 10.4%. I will tell you that I think that that might be slightly higher, but I believe that we have the funds within our budget to be able to address any type of a scenario that might be slightly over that. Positions that did not, some changes that we saw in positions this year. We had a part-time video technician position that was eliminated from administration and was absorbed by the IT department. As you can see, we have Andrew and Jordan in the back room that is working that for us this evening. Wonderful assistants in that area, and they're doing a great job with the loss of the part-time position that we had there. We also are looking at, with the reorganization, we saw our 2 engineering technicians that do our inspections. Those have changed from 2 engineering techs to 1 engineering tech and 1 senior engineering tech. So there's 0 add, 0 change in positions in that area. The fire marshal position was reclassified from battalion chief to assistant fire chief. The frozen first responder positions, 6 in police and 6 in fire, were funded via the public safety sales tax. And there are also 4 additional police officer positions funded in that public safety sales tax that will not go into effect until the budget goes into effect April 1. So we will defer those hiring of those 4 additional officers. Somewhat busy in trying to hire those 6 frozen positions, and then we would hire those 4 additional officers April around the new fiscal year. personnel changes that were requested but not included in the 2020 budget was an additional code enforcement officer due to the stagnant growth in revenues this year. The general fund just really cannot afford to see any additional positions there. Our hope, to just be frank with you, is that with the one of the things that our assistant city manager has spoken about is one of our TIF areas will see it come to fruition. That project is in the, help me, Sheila, which?
Belton Marketplace.
Belton Marketplace, thank you. And that should free up approximately $60,000 a year next year once that's paid off. And we believe that those dollars could then be used to hire a code enforcement officer in next year's budget. We're also looking at, they were requested 7 additional firefighters. Those were not funded. 3 dispatchers, 1 police IT assistant, an emergency management director, 1 victim advocate, and an assistant city engineer. Although you will see that in the Public Works Department, instead of hiring a city engineer, there's a lot of projects that are going on right now. Instead, because of the economy and where we're at right now, it is my recommendation that instead of adding a position, to look at additional professional services and fill the need for those services through consulting services, professional engineering services versus hiring a position that you would pay for benefits and salary and things like that, with the possibility that if there were to be a decline in the economy, the possibility that projects would then wane away and you would have a position that you might want to take a look at that would be last in and first out. So it would be my strong recommendation to not hire that full-time position, but instead we've placed money in for professional services. In light of those, that overview of the general fund and talking about revenues and where we've kind of seen somewhat of a shortfall, and then going through the personnel changes, I'd kind of like to pause at this point and see if there's any questions that you might have regarding these items that are included in the budget.
Okay, we're going to get started. So, number one, how many of you even looked at the city manager's letter? Have all of you read this? And I got 2 different ones. I had to go to a different color. I went from yellow highlighter to a pink one. I don't know. It's just, I guess I'm getting old. I like pink. So, any questions off the bat? I know that in our discussions today that several council people are concerned that we go ahead and talk about it, getting a code enforcer that we've already scratched, that to follow up on all the core codes that we need. Do you want to chime in on this at all? We talked about that this morning. How bad do we need a second code enforcer at least?
Well, we extremely need a second code enforcer. I mean, when you have Jim Brown, he is at the school for the most part and will be until that job is completely finished, if I remember right. And then we have our 1 code enforcer who is trying to do everything that he can to keep up and follow up and monitor. So it is very important. And on that, my question would be, does that TIF that we're looking at, it's actually doesn't come off until next year? Is that right?
It will end this fiscal year.
It will end this fiscal year.
I believe if revenues come in as projected, then the last payment will be December of 2019.
December of 2019. Okay. So it's possible then that we could look at, if that's what we want to do, if that's what, getting them on board a little bit sooner than actually next fiscal year. Possible, I don't know. But we do definitely need, and I don't think anyone on this council doesn't recognize the fact that we extremely need another codes.
Right, and I will be honest with you, we had it in the budget and kept looking at it and trying to keep it in there. One of the things, though, that we really wanted to do is focus on keeping the employees that we have and addressing them and ensuring that we're taking care of the staff that we have before we would bring on any new. And so that's why when we looked at the future year, and hoping, like you said, if revenues come in well and we have a really good year, that's something that we can report back to the council. It could be a possibility that you could do a budget amendment beginning of next year, January, if it pays off in December. You might be able to take a look at that and take a look at possible addition of that position. But at this time, it's not included.
And we just, with the passage of the half-cent public safety sales tax, that allowed us to have a balanced budget. One of the issues that we were having was just to keep up with a one-step increase, the increases in health insurance, the increases in workers' comp, the increases in loggers, and all of that stuff. We needed at least a $300,000 growth in revenue each year in the general fund to be able to keep up with just taking care of the employees that we have. If we add back before we're ready, and we add back when revenues are not growing, we will be in the same situation that we were in last year and the year before that. And so it's imperative that,
We have to have the money to pay and to keep paying it.
yes.
I think that's understood, so.
Questions, more questions as we get going into this? And we'll get more into the weeds here in a little bit, but anything on the city manager's letter as we get started? Did you want to say anything else?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things that I did want to tell the council is that when we got the original requests and they came in, and we knew that in order to be able to, with the reduction in revenues, that some of those revenue streams that are down, we went back to the department heads in the general fund and said, you need to keep your budgets at what they were last year, which when you take a look at contractual and commodities and some of those other expenses, we needed to be able to keep those level so that we could ensure that there was no extra in the budget and that we were being able to take care of our staff. And they all complied. They did a fabulous job. And so as we go forward with that, just wanted to restate that there, with the additional revenues that you're seeing, and that I talked about with the fund balance reserve this year and how that was calculated, that's a one-time impulse of dollars, which is why you're seeing so many additional items that are in capital that are laid out starting on page 5 of the budget message. Totaling about $780,000. There are additional things that you'll be seeing us trying to address. One of the is the GEMT, the Ground Emergency Medical Transport revenue. We had hoped that it could bring in some additional dollars, and when we did the calculations, it was somewhat conservative from what we had thought originally. So Sheila has put out, and the fire department has put out for bid, ambulance billing services. And you'll be seeing that contract come to you probably in the month of February in order to change that service provider, in order to try to see a larger revenue stream for ambulance services, get a company that's more proactive in that. And so we're hoping that that will help us, but we are still projecting our revenues based upon what we have been receiving on those calculations, and it's and those are down.
Which brings a question. Yes, Councilman Trutzel.
When you were doing your projections for the sales tax and property tax, did you confer with the Cass County assessor on the property tax?
Yes, this has all the new calculations, the new assessed.
What his projections are? Mm-hmm. So this is based on his projections. Okay, thank you.
It's actually based on what the collector actually the tax bills
Okay,
the
so
collector
it's
actually.
not, this is the
sent out.
reassessment year is what my point is.
So, yes, I took the Cass County collector, when she prepares bills, she sends us a list of both personal property tax and real estate. And I used that information to calculate our revenues for property taxes.
The reason why I bring that up is that I heard in the office the other day that the assessment, the new assessment, is going to see a sizable change.
Please remember, because of the Hancock Amendment, when assessed values go up, the city is not allowed to get additional revenue. So we have to reduce our levy to make sure that we don't collect more revenue in property taxes than we did the year before. There is a calculation that is done by the state auditor's office that gives us a little bit for inflation. But if assessed values increase, no political subdivision in Missouri, because of the Hancock Amendment, is allowed to get more money from assessed values going up. Our levy will actually decrease when assessed values increase.
Thank you.
Now, that doesn't hold true, though, with new construction. What was the rate that the assessment went up this year on new construction?
Well, I don't remember the amount it was, although I might be able to get to it. But in what happens is, yes, we get to realize our property taxes, we can collect more taxes for new construction. It's the existing property that is in place. That is what the Hancock Amendment touches. It does not include new construction.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is when you do your guesstimate for a budget, you already have the new construction amounts already from these county assessor.
Yes, from the county clerk.
Clerk.
So what the tax bills that the county clerk actually sent out in October, that is what I used because it happened in October. So I had plenty of time to incorporate that into our budget
Was
projection.
that rate, you think, over 5% for new property?
Well, let's look. I don't know. Let's just look let me make this bigger. So if you go to the very first page, here's property taxes. And, here we have, for real estate, we have a $53,000 increase in the general fund. And then, so if I take that and I divide it by this, then it's a 5% increase.
Okay. And the minimum for, because of Hancock's about, the maximum is about what percent?
It just changes each year, but it was not, it changes each year based on the tables that come out with cost of living and inflation and all of those things.
So it would be below 2%?
Yes, very much below.
Okay, so my point is that the new construction development is critical to help support our budget on property tax because they're going to be not fall under the Hancock Amendment.
Correct.
Okay. Does that cause any questions or concerns or anything like that? Okay. Councilman Savage.
I want to back up a little bit and at least state my view on the codes enforcement and ask a question. Right now, is the codes enforcement so busy that it's simply reactive to circumstances, or is this codes enforcement officer able to get out and check things out a little bit? What's the status there?
I would say that we're reactionary in nature.
Okay, how quickly is this codes enforcement officer how much can this person produce? Is there any data on that?
Like cases per day or
Sure,
follow-up?
that'd be great.
Dave, I'm going to
So we do
refer
weekly
Dave for this.
reports where we do weekly reports where we compile the number of complaints, number of citations issued, more importantly, the number of self-abatements that property owners do to take care of the problem. Or we also track the number of city abatements. So we have those figures on a weekly basis, and I give
Okay.
those to the city manager.
Okay, is there any very much, or is there very little? How much, is there any finance generated from such things where you have to carry it beyond discussion, or you have to take it to court? What do you have to do? How's that work?
Well, process-wise, our procedures are, we have a flow chart which details all the steps in the code enforcement process. You might recall the city council reviewed that, but we do a notice of abatement, ask that problems be abated within 10 days. If it's not fixed in 10 days, we issue a ticket and it goes to municipal court.
Okay, and I was fairly much aware of that. Well, I want to state my position that I think that for forever now, we've been too weak in that, just from the information that I get from constituents. Too weak in our code enforcement. There's a lot needs to be done. So my main thing is to back Councilwoman Peak and what she says. We need to figure out a way, if it means hiring, we need to figure out a way to hire, and we need to give direction to, so that we get some of these circumstances that we consistently deal with taken care of. So I want to throw that little bit of support with Councilwoman Peak and what she said.
Okay.
Any other questions so far? Councilman McPherson?
Question, and this goes along with what Mr. Savage was just saying. Is there a possibility of supplementing what we have? I know you talked about with our engineering, supplementing by an outside source. Maybe even a part-time codes that could come in and help on a part-time basis, where we would not maybe be paying the full benefit package that we would, but doing something in a part-time basis.
You know, we've looked at different scenarios, and ultimately what we've tried to do is in our peak time, spring to fall, when we have a lot of, much of that is, weeds and trash and debris,
Right.
as you know, Demetrius Ramirez, who previously worked in codes and is now an inspector, he will come back and help in some of those peak times, as does Jim Brown's, boots on the street, and so is Dave. So, we try to bring those resources in to try to address peak season without it costing an additional impact to the general fund.
And I'd like to point out, as the city council knows, we're doing some stuff now that's just harder. We have had 5 homes demolished this year. We have a new procedure for administrative search warrants, where we give a property owner an opportunity to abate the problem themselves. If they don't do that within a reasonable period of time, we get a court order, we go into their property, we clean it up for them. So those are things that have never been done in Belton before, and all that has legal steps and processes, and it's just harder work than has been done in the past. So the layers are, there's more layers to what we do.
So when you asked me the question, Councilman Savage, as to whether we were reactive, and I said yes, we were, probably on your everyday complaints that you get in. But in that situation that Dave was just talking about, where we had burned out homes and things like that, where people had just vacated them, we were proactive with those.
Absolutely, and it seems to me that we are in the last few years taking definite steps in a positive direction and gaining on it. I think what your statement shows that. I realize there are work involved, but we are moving forward, and I'm glad to see that.
Thank you.
Along those lines too, that's a great segue. How many did you say are in your ward that we've had tear downs this year? We have every ward on my wall, every house in every ward, and we have all kinds of variables on those, but how many did we figure? We talked about that again today.
In Ward 3, there were 2 that the city did, and then either 4 or 5 that the owners abated. 4 that the owners abated, so 6 just in Ward 3.
And part of the codes and part of our community development put great discussion time into those other people to get it done versus us having to tear them down, which they're going to lose money in the long run. So overall, in the whole city, how many have we tore down this year? Or with the consent of the people, the encouragement?
I think the number was 6 in 2018.
I thought we had 7 and 1 on the move.
In the, 8 or 9, not counting
There's 8?
at the Herschel Street.
Yeah, but that's why we're keeping track. We're trying to keep track because the public needs to know that several of those should have been gone years ago. And so you all are cashing checks that should have been taken care of a long time ago. So that's a good thing. And now we've come to the realization we're getting greedy. Now we really need to start pouring it on because of rising expectations. That's why, really I feel like we've got to have another one. We've got to have another person out there to help you guys to get out there and do that collection and do those inspections. So
Mayor,
that'll be fun. Sir?
Yeah, I just have to comment one more similar to what I said, though. I can remember sitting here probably 5 to 7 years ago, and literally all of us were on the verge of begging, let's get something done that our hands are not so tied. So it's a slow process, but I still have to recognize what staff has done. Finally, we've been told that yes, we can do something. So much of the time, we were told there's just not much you can do. Just sit back and enjoy it. And so I think that recognizing what has been done, and then just let it continue, I think we're on the right track. So
I was glad
And
you
I've
said
said
7
that, but
years. 'Cause that
I
was
bet it's
before I
been
was
that
mayor.
long. I bet it's been that long. I can think of some of the councilmen that were up here, and it was like there was nowhere for us to go.
Right.
We were in handcuffs, so to speak.
Sorry, Chief, he didn't mean that. Yes, Councilman Lathrop.
Everybody knows what it feels like.
I can say. I don't like the feel of that jailhouse either. I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Again, Councilman Lathrop, Councilman.
Okay, when we get a court order and we abate the property, do we get paid for that?
You want to challenge that one? You want to
We do put a lien on their property and we go back after them to get reimbursed for that.
Okay. And same way with, if we issue a ticket, they're supposed to pay something on that too.
But we don't want to
Okay,
get
fine.
into that ticket stuff today, right now. We don't want to talk about that.
I know, it's way down.
Well, I'm just talking about the process because the state legislature is what I'm trying to say. Senate Bill 5 and the derivatives after that. And you can't blame anybody here on that.
No, I wasn't blaming anybody. I'm just saying, getting our refund back from it is the problem.
Well, and I'm having a meeting this Friday with mayors, and they want us to come down to Jefferson City to do a unified, to get that changed so that we're not having to bear the expense that people don't even show up anymore to court, I mean, because there's nothing that we can do. So we're just out money.
Yeah, and it's not only traffic, but weed abatements and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They don't count that as being worthwhile.
Yeah, place a lien and then we put it on their tax bill.
Yeah.
To try to recover those costs. Thank you, Sheila.
Anything else? Okay,
Ready?
are you ready for
I'm ready.
something? First thing I'm gonna say before we get started here on we've talked personnel changes yet?
Yes?
Okay, general fund is what we're gonna start with first.
And
How many council people have looked at their budget books? And it really helped me that we broke it down where we see what we're gonna talk about tonight, and it broke down in small enough segments. And I think, what was the word we're using, Sheila? The new word for me, Councilman Lathrop, what was your word? Prioritize or?
Prioritize.
Prioritize.
Prioritize. Guys, we're gonna go over it line by line as the way it looks like as we start, but you'll see as we go that there won't be need to go over everything exactly as is. And I'm looking here to see if I had any other notes on that. What I'm trying to say though is, as council people, we've got to be familiar just with that part that we're gonna do each session. So you don't have to be experts on the whole book. It's broke down so that you can do just a little bit at a time. So hopefully, we've already talked quite a bit on nothing tonight. So you understand how the time is going to be, you know.
Well, and Mayor, the reason why I stress that everyone kept their budgets in line with what it was last year equates to there's really not a lot of large changes. Where you're going to see your changes is in your 2.5% COLA and your 2.5% step increase. So you're going to see it in the salary and benefit line. If you go and you take a look at the comparison from last year to this year, you're going to see many of them, they're right in line with each other. There's no large increases. And the only large increased areas that you're going to see are in capital. And so really we can spend a lot of our time. We've talked about the salaries, and I'll still go through those as we go through each one of the accounts. But there's really 3 areas that I really needed to focus out tonight. And if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get started and look, if you'll look at your legislative budget, that's on page 7. Account 1000. In this legislative account, you'll notice that what we tried to take a look at to just kind of give you an idea of where you're at with the budget is if you take a look at it's the 3rd column, correct, Sheila? The 2019 amended budget. That would be what this year's budget is. And then the last column is the proposed 2020 budget. And so what we tried to do was and if you'll take a look on the left, you'll see salaries and wages, employee benefits, and we've talked about those. And you'll basically see increases in all of those in each of the accounts because of the STEP and the COLA and then insurance. And then under services, what we really tried to take a look at was the services total, the supplies total, and then in this one for legislation was the interfund transfers. So you'll see that the biggest change here was about a $3,500 change in supplies. And much of that comes from, we included community programs this last year. We did not do postcards for the bulky item pickup, and people wanted to get additional information, so we did include that this year. And then also a little bit of additional money for supplies. And then at the bottom, you'll take a look at those interfund transfers and those increased by about $30,000. And so those are your largest changes in legislation.
You got any questions on any of those?
I have
Sir.
one on the services.
Uh-huh.
It says wellness program, if I'm reading this right,
Uh-huh.
27,000.
That's the wellness program for the entire city.
Oh, I thought it was just for the legislative. Now that that's, okay, thank you.
I haven't ever seen you at the gym either, so. Okay, what do you want to go to now?
That's because I was on the track outside.
Okay.
The next account that sees a large change is in the senior center. And the reason that you're going to see that is under services. We had 0 amount for the amended budget this year, when in all actuality, the contract amount, we did the RFP for Mid-America Regional Council. And so there's expenses allocated to that, along with the additional amount of revenue that we're seeing coming in. So we're just showing the revenue coming in and then the expenses going out for contractual for senior center. And
What's the issue today on the senior center on legislation? We have motion on senior center tonight? Do we have one?
It's a budget amendment for additional grant money that we received from Mark.
From Mark.
And
And how
we'll
much was
verify
that
that.
again? Do you know? I mean,
it's like $5,500.
is that going to make a difference, though?
Yeah, what's making a difference there? Oh, you mean in this budget?
Yes.
No, it's a one-time funding grant, so it
What am I
affects
going to
this
call
year's
those
budget.
so I'm proper? Is that a windfall?
No, it's a grant.
Okay, it's great. Just thought I'd better be sure. Okay, what's up? Any questions on senior center? Okay.
The next account is administration, and and administration is pretty much for the rest of these accounts except for public works. You'll see here that the budget is pretty much in line. If you look at the bottom line, there's about a $20,000 difference, and that $20,000 difference comes in salaries and benefits for staff that's within the administration budget. If you take a look, services stayed, actually was reduced, supplies went up slightly, and utilities is right at the same amount. So we tried to keep those with very small changes.
Was there any going through there, council people? Do you see any going down through the 2019 amended down through the proposed 20? Do you see anything that catches your eye as you go through those columns that bothers you? Any questions?
Well, the health insurance caught my eye. It jumped quite a bit.
But we've got to, again, for
But
1
you've
year, what
already
is it?
discovered that.
It's
Yeah.
froze for,
Yeah, it's locked in until the end of the year.
okay. Any questions on that? I'll give you a second. Go ahead and look all you want. See if anything comes out and grabs you. That's why I brought my ruler. I can't do it without looking that way. So that's been the whole theme so far, is that we've actually kept it as close as we could as we go through.
Yep.
Now, you two are going to tell us when we see something that stands out, right? If something has jumped.
Right.
The
Yeah, there-
benefits is what really stands out, and we have no control over that.
I really think it would be helpful and you guys would learn if I, so can I say that you're asking a question about health insurance? I'd really like to tell you how we budget in the budget file for health insurance and dental benefits and vision and all of that stuff. So we're very conservative when we budget for that. If somebody has family coverage, we budget for family coverage for them. If they have single coverage, we budget for single coverage for them. If they do not have city insurance, and then we budget for them to have single coverage. And if they are new and haven't elected, or we have a vacant position and we haven't hired, we budget for family coverage. You will see a lot of times when we go through the year, a lot of our savings where we are under budget is in health insurance, dental, and vision benefits. And the reason is because we budget for that very conservatively. We don't ever know if somebody's going to leave during the year, if somebody has single coverage and is going to have a baby or get married, and then they're going to switch to family coverage. And this has served us very well through the years to make sure that we did not have a budget shortfall.
Any comments on that? Conservative. So what's the difference between your glass ball, your looking glass, and what was the difference this year from last year? You understand what I'm saying? The savings, or did we go under?
Typically, we will end up under a little bit.
Right. Questions, comments? Okay.
What I'd like to do now, and as you've said, because we've been looking at all these accounts and looking at each, at the line items within each one, the example of administration, it pretty much carries out throughout the rest of the budget. And so what I'd like to do now is go to the Public Works account, which is 2,000. So that would be on page 15. So if you'll go about 5 or 6 tabs a little bit further in. And where you'll see the difference in Public Works is in the contractual services, as I stated previously. And Sheila, can you help me find that in here?
It is 430.20.
Correct. It's about, under services, it's about the 5th line item down. And we added $38,500 in that line for professional service, engineering services to help us on projects as.
What number was it again?
3020, 400, 3020, about the 5th one down, contractual. So it's this right here, 38.5. And that's the large dollar amount that you'll see jump there in that account.
questions on that? Go down through it again and see if there's any disparities for you through 19 through 20 proposed. Look down through your columns and see if there's something that's bothering you that, of course, salary and wages went up, and that was with the raises. Anything else as you compare and contrast?
And council, please know that just because we're finishing with the general fund tonight, that does not mean that you can't go back and find something later and bring that and ask that. So anytime any questions come up, please don't ever hesitate to ask. Your questions not only help each other when we're answering them, it helps us know where we need to give you guys more information, because we don't know that you don't know something unless you ask. And it also helps the public. We found out through the summer, through the budget process, that our citizens, they had a lot of questions and a lot of misconceptions about city finances. And, you know, you guys asking questions will help your constituents so much.
Here.
Mayor,
Are you ready?
Tom's got a question.
Councilman McPherson.
This is on line item 402.015, the maintenance agreements. It looks like we're almost, not quite half of what we had for FY 219, and still below what we had for 17 and 18. Is there a reason why maintenance agreements is so low? It's a good thing, I know, but is there a reason why it's low, and is that anything that we should be concerned with, that it may end up having to be bumped up?
Every single department head was given their budget and told to make sure that their services total, supplies total for this year's budget was less than or equal to, because we needed the money to take care of salary and benefits. And so every single department head went back, they analyzed, they know the needs, and they went in and put the money that they had available where they needed it.
Okay. It was a
And
pretty good sized drop, that's why I just,
Yes, they needed that money, and it's scattered throughout different places. But you can see how engineering went up, and then
And Celia might be able to help answer that question.
Yes, as far as those maintenance agreements, we ended up taking the asset management cartograph system, which is primarily used by streets and water and sewer, and they're paying for their portion of it.
okay.
So it didn't really go down, it just was redistributed.
Okay.
Good question. Councilman Trutzel.
Under the line there for telephone, does that include, is that landlines and cell phones, is that what that is? Combination, or just one or the other?
Which one was that? I'm sorry, Councilman.
On telephone there, 3705. I'm just kind of curious if it's landline and cell phone.
Okay, I got it. Right there.
I'm going to tell you in a second. Mobile phones.
That's all mobile phone?
Yes, mobile phones and iPad.
So then we have another line for landlines here in the building?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe that it's in that annex. I think it's all in administration.
Are we using real telephone lines, or are we using digital lines?
Digital.
Okay,
Digital.
thank you.
Other questions so far? Okay. We're moving along.
Okay. So, in completing out the general fund, we can look at the other lines if you want, but what I'd like to do now, if you don't mind, is I'd like to go over and talk about the capital. What you're seeing are just small variations based upon salary and benefits, where you'll see those increases. And there's really no large dollar amounts in the rest of the accounts by line item. But where you do see that additional increase is in capital. So we have capital under general capital, which is,
No, 4,400, sorry.
you.
Go back one.
go back one,
Page 26.
what page, Sheila? I'm sorry.
26.
Thank you. Page 26. Capital requests is what the page is called. And I've also delineated them in the budget message, if it's easier for you to pull out the letter. And this is where the biggest variation that you'll see this year in this year's budget is in capital items. Under many of the Sheila, I'm going to ask you right now, if you don't mind talking about the fiber connection for IT and what exactly that fiber connection is.
I think I have to get a different book. Hold on a second. Sorry.
That's okay.
The fiber connection is to upgrade the fiber connections for disaster recovery solutions. Our fiber connections are strong, but we need better switches in order to take advantage of the speed potential. And this will help lay a foundation for better disaster recovery between City Hall, Annex, Fire Station 1, Fire Station 2, Street, and Water.
Okay. There's some other licensing issues that are there, the Windows 10 Pro upgrade, Microsoft Office upgrade, and then Councilman Schultz, one of the things that you talked about earlier this year was the city website upgrade. And so we are looking at and included that in this year's budget to try to address that.
About how long does it take to do that, to create one?
2020 fiscal year. Because the hard part to that is populating all of the data into it and then making sure that it's working. So,
Just be able to match brainwars,
yeah. Or better.
or better.
The next item on here is in our finance and HR department, executive solutions. Sheila, if you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, this is an electronic timekeeping software, and it will make it so that we are not doing such a manual time card process. Actually, we won't be doing manual time cards at all. It will be all electronic. You can do it either on your desktop, on your mobile phone. You can set it up so that people can only time in when they're within a certain radius of their work area. The park actually uses actual time clocks, and this would be able to replace that, and they like it because people have to actually physically be there to clock in and clock out. Well, this makes it so that, you can still put those restrictions on, but they can do it from their phone if they don't have a desk computer, or from their desk computer. And then supervisors will be able to approve those electronically and submit them to finance for payroll.
Didn't we have a conversation about doing it this way like 100 years ago? Chief Larkey? Did we
Trying to
talk
automate
about
it,
that?
yes.
You can see, Mayor, $41,000. We have not had $41,000, and some changes that we made in this year's budget allowed for the funding to become available. And
What's the
so,
cost savings, though? That's what I was after 5 years ago. What's going to be the cost savings?
There's more of an efficiency savings from the streamlining of staff and being able to automate the process.
Now, we got two chiefs here and department heads here in front. Are they going to be responsible to, what's their responsibility on okaying those then? How's that going to work? Is that going to be a smooth process or is it going to be a bumpy process?
it's going to be whoever, so for example, I do not sign the time cards for every single person in my department.
Right.
Chief Larkey does not sign the time cards for every single department. They all have immediate supervisors, and those supervisors will continue to be responsible.
To give you an idea of how we do payroll. Right now, we do payroll, the shift commander fills out an Excel spreadsheet that we developed of all his people each day. And he puts on the on that spreadsheet whether they're working, whether they're off sick or vacation, whatever the reason. He prints that off, he signs it, and he gives it to my secretary. Then my secretary takes it and puts it into the time card Excel spreadsheet that she does on her computer that we need for the city finance people. So she fills that out. We print that off, then we take that to City Hall, and then City Hall then the finance people will take that and then enter that into their payroll system. So if we had an electronic payroll system, the shift commander could do it from the get-go in the system instead of printing twice and carrying. It can all be done electronically. And then when the shift commander's done and when payroll's ready to go, I or whoever I assign can verify that everything is correct, and then we ship it to them in the same system, and then they go from there. It would save a lot of time.
Do any of you department heads have any problems with this at all? How many businesses do I know that do it the way we do it right now? It's like starting your computer with a pull cord. Yes.
Those businesses are out of business.
What, I'm just saying that that's a good thing. It's well overdue, I guess, but I'm curious about the cost savings because I still think that, what about your man hours, Sheila, for doing that? Won't it save you a lot of time?
It will free up time to be able to have efficiencies and free up time to be able to do other things, yes.
Wow, getting closer to 21st century. This is good. Questions or comments? Okay.
Next three items under capital funded items are for vehicles. One for Public Works and engineering technician's truck, garage operations for a service truck, and in the an inspection vehicle. Those are all at end of life. And Celia, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the current ones that are being replaced or their age.
I don't have that information, but I can get it, but we looked at all those, and the engineering tech is Ron Raines, and it's had a lot of brake issues, and I don't remember how old it is, but I think in the 90s, and I could double check that, but it needs to be replaced. As far as the service truck, I know that they rely on the garbage operations, garage operations to go out, when they need to go out and do repairs. And so that one is, all of our vehicles, a lot of them are really beyond their useful life.
Well, that brings me up to a great point, and a great segue to bring it up right now is, are you keeping comparable data on how many repairs you have to do versus if we leased it, it was 8 by the lease instead of us spending money and then versus the cost of the lease? Is it more cost efficient to do leased equipment or, Chief, go ahead, tell me.
The studies that we've looked at over the years is it's always less expensive to purchase your vehicles outright if you have the cash. than it is to lease the vehicles. A leased vehicle will cost you more in the long run because you still have to maintain a leased vehicle also.
Well, I didn't realize that. I thought it was part of the lease. Okay. Councilman Lathrop.
Well, I would like to know, we're getting two trucks here. One of them's 24,000, the other one's 50,000. What are we talking about?
Power windows.
Our windows.
That moonroof.
It's a pretty smooth ride.
One's a larger,
Yeah, one's a service truck.
larger truck. That service truck is gonna be a much larger truck than what the inspection truck is gonna be, the engineering truck.
Right.
Big toolbox in the back too,
They need to go
Probably
out,
a
and
one-ton truck.
they need to go out and be equipped to handle all situations.
Ranger.
Well, it just looked like it's over twice as much spending there for,
I can get you the details of the vehicles. And just to let you know that we keep track of age and the maintenance and then project when we think it may need to be replaced, but we never just replace it based on that schedule. We take a look at all the maintenance issues and the years and the other factors that go into it before we even have the request.
Councilman Trutzel.
This is a little bit, the police department's gonna buy some new vehicles. Is there any consideration of I understand they're coming out with electric police cars. Have you even thought about, that's supposed to be pretty fast.
The electric vehicles are generally more expensive than what the other ones are also, and I'm sure that we could do some comparative study and see what it would take to switch over to electric vehicles and the charging systems, but there is no one locally at this
It's new,
point
it's new, I know it
doing
is.
that, so.
Yeah.
You're also limited on how far, a former city I worked at, they had some electrical cars, and you're also limited about how far you can go before you have to plug in again. So you need to look at all those, issues when you consider that.
The ones that have used them so far have been in urban settings, smaller vehicles in urban settings, where they're not out and covering as much area as what our vehicles would be.
Thank you.
Chief, I guess.
It's on 7:05.
We need to try to go to it as
You
quickly as
just have to
possible.
run past how far the battery lasts.
Yeah.
Interesting. So how far did we get tonight so far?
Well, we're gonna go back after you do your public hearing.
Okay, we're gonna come back. Okay, so, wow, time for me to wake up then. All right, with that, at this time, we're gonna adjourn the work session. Okay,
Mayor,
sir,
can I ask one question?
we're gonna come back to it.
Okay.
Write it down. I've been writing all kinds of them down.
Okay.
We have a
Please.
public hearing at 7 PM, so.
Got it.
I'm looking for it. Okay. Close the work session, and at this time, we're going to open up the public hearing. And do you want to read that to him?
Pursuant to sections 99.800 to 99.865 of the revised Missouri statutes, a public hearing tonight to determine if the following tax increment financing plans and the redevelopment projects associated with such plans are making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedules contained within the approved plans for completion of the projects.
Okay, with that,
This evening, we have Carolyn Yatsuk and Sheila Ernzen that will be able to speak to the TIF projects. And Carolyn, if you don't mind.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight I will be presenting the City Belton Tif Project's annual report. As the City Clerk read, the purpose of this hearing shall be to determine if the redevelopment projects are making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule that is contained within the approved development plans, and we do have 6 of those. So after the public hearing concludes, and when we go back to the regular meeting, that is when there will be an opportunity to make a motion to determine whether they are making appropriate progress. So I'm going to provide the overview of the 6 active TIFs as it pertains to the construction timeline and details regarding the activity within those TIF districts. Sheila Ernzen, our finance director, She's here to answer any finance questions that you all may have. And please feel free to stop me at any time during this for questions that you might have. So the first TIF that we're going to talk about tonight is the Belton Town Center TIF. That is located on 58 Highway, and the major tenants are Home Depot, Target, and Kohl's. The project status for this particular TIF is completed, and based on the current revenue stream, the estimated payoff year is fiscal year 2021. If you have any questions on this particular TIF, we'd be happy to answer those at this time.
Sheila, when will, what would that give us when that comes to fruition? How much does that look like after we've paid all the jurisdictions? What type of number could that be?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have it, when we get back to go back to the budget presentation, I actually have the spreadsheet and I can show you how I would calculate that and tell
Okay.
you the amount then.
Well, it's a considerable amount is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Okay, go
Sorry.
ahead.
Mayor,
Sir.
I think that's a common question for every one of these
Right.
as we go through. So if we could have that information, that'd be fabulous.
So I have it all. It's on
And
one
we'll get
nice
it
little
later.
spreadsheet. So if you guys ask me when we go back to the budget presentation, I'll be able to pull it up.
Perfect.
But with this PowerPoint, you can't see anything except the PowerPoint when it's open like this.
Great.
Okay. And if you'll notice at the bottom of each of your sheets, there is room for you all to take notes. So when we do go back to the budget presentation, you can make those notes and we can next year include that information. So if there are no other questions on this TIF, I'll move on.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the next TIF is the Belton Marketplace TIF. That is located on 58 Highway. Major tenants are Joann's, Starbucks, Buffalo Wild Wings, and PetSmart. That project status is also completed. And, oh, by the way, I failed to mention there are larger maps if you need that are also in your packet. This map would be on page 16 for reference. The estimated, or based on current revenue streams, this is the one that Sheila was alluding to earlier. The estimated payoff year would be fiscal year 2020. So if there are any questions on this TIF, we'd be glad to answer those at this time as well.
Moving on.
Okay. Y Highway Marketplace. If you will recall, on November 27th, this developer came in and requested an 8th amendment, which extended the deadline, the construction completion deadline, to May 31st, 2020. So therefore, the project status on this one is in progress. This is the TIF that's on 163rd Street. It includes the new price chopper. Project Area 1 is complete. That is where the price chopper is located. And for your reference, page 17 is a larger map if you'd like to look at that, page 17 in your packet. So Project Area 1 is the price chopper. That is complete. Project Area 4 is where Arvest Bank is located, and that is also complete. Yet to be constructed are Project Areas 2 in orange, Area 3 in blue, and 5 in pink. And as I stated before, the new completion date is May 31st, 2020.
Are we losing money on this TIF, Sheila?
Can you tell me exactly what you mean by that question?
What I mean by that is are we, as Price Chopper as a standalone, is it meeting our needs?
Okay, maybe the best way to answer this is if you look at the total outstanding obligations at March 31st, 2018,
Right.
it's $8.6 million. And the total revenues that we received in fiscal year 2018 is $608,537. And so if you divide $8609,306 by $608,537. I believe that the answer is going to be much more than 23 years. So this TIF will probably collapse run out the statute before the certified costs are completely paid off.
And what improvements, Carolyn, did we get with that TIF?
Okay, this particular TIF, we did receive $4 million in public infrastructure, which was the widening of Y Highway from 58 to Turner Road.
58 to Turner Road.
Yes.
Okay. Questions? We beat this one up pretty good.
Yeah.
And I know you're hot and heavy on, and we can't talk about it, but you want to say anything at all?
Well, yeah, I do. If you'll remember, Jay Ferguson with Ferguson Properties came in and introduced himself, and they talked about the Belton, and they were actually issued their certificate of occupancy today, although they are a sales tax generator in that they're selling hearing aids. It's 1,000 square feet, and so they are anticipated to open on January 28th. And there's also a National Urgent Care Center that is actively looking at that space for 4,000 square feet. That is a non-sales tax generator, but the thought process behind that, as Mr. Ferguson shared with you and the Cosentino's family shared with you, is just trying to generate some activity within that center.
How many people on the council need a hearing aid? Okay. Wow. It's on the side that my wife always talks, so, it's like, yeah, that'll help. Beltone, okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You moving on, questions on that one? We've talked about that one quite a bit. Cedar Tree?
Well, the next one is actually Southtown Plaza, which that one you are also familiar with. On 12/11/18 at that city council meeting, there was an amendment for the Menards section of this portion of this TIF. And then on 12/18/2018, Herman Enterprises Council also passed an amendment to extend the construction completion dates on both of those projects also to May 31st of 2020. And Menards is Project Area 1, which is in yellow. Project status on this TIF obviously is still in progress. Project Area 2 is in orange, and that is also the developer's Menards on that. And then Project Area 3, which is in blue, is the Herman Enterprises location.
Okay, Carolyn, you can answer this. All that property going up the hill along the Marquee, and then as we go over to Town Center Drive, how much of that is TIF'd?
None of that is in a TIF.
Okay, I just want to make everybody know there's
Sure,
no
this-
TIF on any of that.
Yeah, this
up
is the
there.
only corner for that developer that is in a
And what's the
TIF.
project you have at the top behind Home Depot that's just getting rolling? What is that one?
Avid Hotel.
And when's the figure, have they gone through the process? Are they getting ready to roll?
I believe that's going to the Planning Commission on the 4th. Is that correct, Dave?
February 4th, okay. Thank you. Questions on that one? And that's in a non-TIFed area?
The Avid is
Right.
correct.
Okay. Okay. Going on.
Okay. So the next one is Y Belton Plaza. A larger map is in your packet on page 19. This one is the one that is right off I-49 and 163rd Street. It's Hobby Lobby, Neaters, Ross, Marshalls, Five Below, Petco, to name just a few. This project status is also in progress. And so there is no estimated payoff year at this time because there are costs still to be certified as it's not fully built out. And so I will just go, page 19 is a larger map, I think I already said that. But Project Area 1, I did want to make mention that it is fully complete except for the hotel site. We did meet with the developer, and he did give me permission to share that might not develop into a hotel, and he might actually, he's contemplating doing a land transfer or a sale to Masters Transportation for that lot. Project Area 2 is in orange, and it still has about 4 lots to be built out. This was an aggressive timeline. So this timeline, the TIF contract anticipated that Area 2, again in orange, would be fully built out by the second quarter of 2018. That has not come to fruition. However, right next to where Ulta Beauty is, the developer has an LOI that there's going to be a national shoe retailer there, and I believe he said 5,000 square feet? 6,000 square feet. Moving on to Project Area 2A, which is in the green. That construction deadline is the second quarter of 2019. And Project Area 3, the developer never even wound up purchasing that property. If he does, it is in a non-reimbursable area. That is what the agreement states. So with that, I did speak with Sid Douglas today. He's our economic development attorney, and he's going to be taking a look at this development agreement to see how we can move forward. The construction deadlines are approaching, so this might be one that comes back before you for an amendment to have some of these lots.
How long was that meeting on Friday?
It was
3 hours.
2-3 hours, yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff still coming to Belton.
Yeah. And I do want to point out, I'm glad you mentioned that, Mayor. So in the orange, those lots along Y Highway, he said he could have had those filled by now. He has had a lot of interest in fast food restaurants, but he is holding out for what we hope to be sit-down restaurants. We would rather see sit-down restaurants along there. So just...
And to be frank, he told us the names of the ones that he could have had there, and it made me cringe, but he's absolutely right that that'll hurt the shopping in the mall, per se, with all the different retail in there. It's the idea to have this sit down, and that's your philosophy, and it makes me sick.
Sit-downs would be my preference.
Right.
Yes. So if there are any questions, we'd be glad to answer those.
You ready?
No, I'm good. Thinking of you and the fast food.
I love fast food. That's the problem.
It almost made me laugh.
It's the truth, though. I think that this developer will find a place for those businesses also. So it's not like they're going to go away. He's got them on the hook.
They are still in the market, yes.
Yes. Councilwoman?
Yes. Carolyn, Area 1 that may not be a hotel now, what does that do to the TIF? I mean, how will that affect a TIF if he sells that off? Because
this might be a better question for Sheila, but something that I learned from our conversation yesterday, that hotels are exempt from TIF. Want to add to that?
Sales tax eats, there's no such thing as eats from hotels. So the hotel would have contributed pilots to the plan, and so would the project that would happen would also contribute pilots to the plan. So it's just a question of the overall construction value and the difference in the pilot's amount.
Okay, thank you.
And that's a great question. It brings up our Battle Royal meeting last week. What about the contract they have on that? Every TIF, Sheila, is different. Can you explain what is in that contract there that's different than several others? Like the dental place, the Heartland Dental, what is it?
Well, every TIF contract is different, and it's negotiated and laid out in such a way where they take the total costs that are planning to be certified, how quickly we would like to get that paid off, and then the revenues that are going to be generated in order to pay off that TIF. And so each contract is different, and it's based on the plan that the developer brought to the TIF commission, and that the TIF commission approved, and then the council also approved. So each
Okay.
TIF is not the same. Each TIF contract is not the same. nor
And
should it
my
be.
compare and contrast was last week, they had the ability on this TIF, a certain percent of theirs is non-sales tax bearing businesses because it's a major development versus a very small development.
Their plan contemplated service in order to bring different retail into the plan for why Belton Plaza's TIF contract, which is different than the developer that entered into the Southtown Plaza TIF contract.
Super. Questions? Moving on.
I did want to clarify, just for the public, that was a good question, Councilwoman Peak. So pilots versus eats, just for the general public, I think would be helpful.
EATS stands for Economic Activity Taxes, and those are generated from sales tax economic activity. Pilots are payments in lieu of taxes, and those have to do with property taxes. And what those are, currently, before something's developed, it has a tax amount. That tax amount does not go away when a TIF happens. The developer or the property owner continues paying that property tax, but then whatever added value, so if they build something, that's the increment on top of that. And the developer or the business owner still pays the total amount of taxes that they would have without a TIF. It's just that the taxing jurisdictions don't get that money. Instead, that increment, the pilot amount, it comes to the city to go into the TIF and pay back those certified costs. So a lot this summer, we had conversations with the public, and they thought that those businesses, those property owners aren't paying their fair share of taxes. That is not correct. The property owner doesn't see any difference. The property owner is still paying the exact same amount that they would pay if there was not a TIF.
Okay, well, along with that, that's a good segue. What public improvements have we got out of this one? Out of that TIF, what got built that we didn't have the money to do?
Okay. I'm glad I knew you were going to ask these questions.
Oh, my goodness.
So, there was $5 million in public infrastructure on Phase 1 and Phase 2 of this TIF. The first was the extension of Markey Parkway north of 163rd Street, so Markey Parkway to about where Quick Trip is.
The warehouse.
The warehouse, correct. And then the removal of Quick Trip Way. That used to extend all the way down to 163rd Street. So there was a cost associated with eliminating that road and then reconstructing Markey Parkway. And then in Phase 2, it was the relocation of Turner Road and the elimination of flood zone.
Okay, and then with that, what was the tax amount that all the jurisdictions were dividing? And what are all the jurisdictions, just quickly? It's us, it's the schools, it's the library, it's the county. And I'm missing a few, but you get the idea. There's several jurisdictions. What was the amount for, like, Gateway 1 and then 2? What was the amount? I know.
I'm not sure I understand.
It was $4,000 for some, originally.
Just on the,
That was almost the whole amount, all of our developments. The assessed value of that property before it was developed was right around $4,000. Each one. And so the people don't realize that if it just sits there, it's $4,000 you're gonna get every year, which we did. What was like, the new one was Southview,
Southview is also $4,000.
$4,000 is what I'm saying. And people don't realize that that's the amount of taxes you're getting versus all the public improvements and all that. Okay, what's next?
Okay, so
Questions on any of those?
Okay, moving on, the final one is Cedar Tree. That map is on page 20 for you. If you'd like a larger map, it's on the northwest corner of I-49 and 58 Highway. Brubaker's, Planet Fitness, and Aaron's are the primary tenants. That project status is completed. The estimated, completed meaning the construction, the all of the improvements that were made to the shopping center have been completed. The estimated payoff year based on current revenue stream is fiscal year 2037. Any questions on this one?
That was truly a blighted shopping center. And that's what these TIFs are all about, is blighted areas. So I thought that was critical. You got one on that one?
No, it's
I
just
heard
that
you
I
did
think
that.
what you stated was absolutely correct, that it seems to me like that is doing so well. If it continues to do that, I would look for that to pay off.
Well, I gotta tell you,
Sooner, that was a positive thing right there.
she's a yard dog on them about getting all those sections filled in. And it used to be, when you drove down 58 Highway, well, why are these businesses all, well, if you look around, they're all being taken up along 58 Highway, and our data shows us that our traffic counts are well, Chief, they're pretty good, aren't they? I saw the accident at Y and 58 last night, which was neat. Okay, we got a lot of traffic. You were gonna say something, Sheila?
I went ahead and pulled up that spreadsheet. That you can't see it because this, if you guys are done with this, I can take this down. And this is gonna be really small, so please don't squint and try to look at it.
Was that being funny, having all that snow like we had last week or so? On that screen we had?
No. Okay, so, this is a spreadsheet that I use to basically figure out and estimate how much of our sales tax revenue is going to go to TIF each year. So this is just the city's 1% sales tax. I'm just gonna go the last 12 months, so we have the most recent numbers. For Belton Town Center TIF, the 1% general sales tax amount that came from Belton Town Center TIF is $409,789.90, which means that when the Belton Town Center TIF gets paid off, the general fund will see an additional $409,000 for the 1% general sales tax. We have half-cent public safety. We have the half-cent public safety sales tax. That is not going to be affected by this. The half-cent public safety sales tax none of the existing TIF revenues will be deducted from that new tax. But we do have a streets, so half of that $409,000 will be added to be able to use for street infrastructure. Half will be able to go towards the capital improvement sales tax, a quarter cent to fire, and half to the parks. So that is just Belton Town Center TIF, and remember that one, we have about 2 more years, 2 more budget years after this budget year. Then if you look at Belton Marketplace TIF, the last 12 months is actually $70,545.27. Now remember, that's just the last 12 months, so if you ask me a couple of months from now when I go back and look at the last 12 months, it's not going to be the same amount. The Y Highway Marketplace TIF, $107,388.62 for Project Area 1, and $3,913.96 for Project Area 2. It will be very many years before Y Highway Marketplace gets paid off. The Y Belton Plaza TIF, $150,197.13. As more businesses come in to that, then obviously that sales tax amount will probably increase. The Southtown Plaza TIF, $175,488.37. And the Cedar Tree TIF, $15,900.86. $15,986. And so I just, each month as we do the calculation, I add to this and I use this to try to, you know, first I always look at what I think our sales tax growth will be for gross before TIF, and then I use these numbers to estimate and try to figure out how much of our gross sales tax will be taken and go in to pay those certified costs back.
And what percent of the budget is our sales tax?
About a
20,
quarter,
25?
about.
Okay. Councilwoman Peak, we kind of travel, we talk to her all the time about our charts that we have that we run with it on the sales tax. And your crystal ball said 3% last year, which you were spot on. And this year it's 6%. We've got 3 months left in the fiscal year. Are you going to be spot on, or are we going to be right exactly? Exactly. That was a joke. Okay.
I truly have a lot of hope and have for the last several months that we're going to hit our sales tax projections for this current budget year.
If you're off a percent or two, did we get to give her a penalty? No. Wow. Okay, so you've been pretty close all through the years, so I can't say a whole lot bad. Anything else on that? Where we at?
I think this concludes the public hearing, and then we will come back later unless there's any public comments.
Any public comments? I have to call for that. Anybody? And I got to pause and have a commercial, drink a cup of coffee. Anybody? Anybody want to speak to these? I'd like to adjourn the public hearing, and now I'd like to reopen our work session, and we're at what page? And
Capital projects.
capital project, what page?
Page 27.
It's close. It's about one.
Page. Shows the equipment that fire's looking at, and vehicles, as well as police, and the equipment for those. For fire, we're looking at CPR equipment, ballistic protection, AED for staff vehicles, and then ambulance remounts. Chief Larkey did request 3 chassis remounts this year. Unfortunately, we'll reuse the existing boxes. Unfortunately, we were only able to afford 2 out of this year's budget. But, so that's why you see that dollar figure there. And then under police, some long-standing items. Paint the exterior metal portions of the police department, HVAC for the communications center, computer equipment, 5 patrol vehicles. As you'll recall, all the patrol vehicles were cut out of last year's budget, and replacement shower inserts for the jail. And that brings the total amount for capital outlay this year to $779,650.
Chief, on 7,400, canines? We're gonna have puppies?
Didn't make it.
It didn't get included.
I know you talked about it. Who cut that? Who cut that out of the budget?
I did.
I just thought I'd ask.
She's a cat person. Is that right?
Because I know in our neighborhood watch groups, everybody was really pretty in favor of getting us some dogs, some hunters.
I have a great idea. I think that that we should take donations to fund our canines.
Wow, will you start?
I think that's a
It was included
mayoral
because Sheila
project.
wanted it. It was not one of the priorities.
Right.
When we were asked to prioritize, that was one of the things that was not included. So
But you have utilized the dogs that
we have had police canines before. Understand that if dollars were available, that would be one of the things that we would stress that would be very useful. However, with the limited funds that we have and knowing that we had the personnel costs that were promised the citizens, there were not enough dollars to go around to also include the canine. The canines are much more expensive than just the purchase of the animal itself. There's quite a bit of money that goes along with maintaining the dog, maintaining the training, and everything that goes along with it. So the animals themselves, you can, in fact, get donated lots of times, but it's all of those other costs that go along with it that folks don't necessarily see.
Where we're gonna get do we know where we're gonna get the patrol cars, what the average cost, is that just 6 into?
In the past, we have looked at the state bid on police cars, whoever may have the state bid, and then we have put that out for local pricing also. It just depends on the year. Sometimes a local dealer will meet or beat the state bid. Other times we've gone with the state bid. And at this point, I'm not sure who has that.
Any particular model that you want?
Right now, our equipment is set up for either the Ford sedans, which they have now quit making, or the Ford SUVs, which they won't be making until later in the model year. So even if these are approved in April, it will probably be late into 19, maybe even into 20 before we would be looking to replace those.
Questions, folks?
Because if we don't go with the Ford Explorer vehicle, which is what we have right now, we would also be looking to change out a lot of the other equipment that is specially fit to that Ford Explorer. So,
Councilman Trutzel.
Chief, on the fire, is this ballistic protection, is this what I'm thinking it is, or is it something else?
It's what you're thinking. It's a trend moving around the country to get firefighters ballistic protection.
Okay, that's what I thought it was, and we talked about that before, so I just didn't know if it was something secret that the fire department has. Okay, thank you.
Well, I would probably wanted my firefighters to have that at Ferguson. I mean, and that could happen anywhere. Any other questions on police, fire? I guess we call that capital outlay.
Right.
Okay.
That completes the capital outlay portion. The other portion that we wanted to talk about this evening is related to the public safety sales tax. And Sheila, I'm going to let you take this portion away.
Okay, so first I want to point out that we have a new fund, Fund 12, and this is where the money from the public safety sales tax will go into. I looked at a lot of different ways of doing this, and I thought that the best way, the most transparent way would to have this revenue come into its own fund, and then we would calculate what the transfer would need to be to pay for the additional public safety expenses in the general fund.
And Sheila, just as a clarification, if they want to follow along, public safety sales tax is under Fund 12, which is page 28 in the budget book.
Okay. And so actually I'm going to figure out the transfer amount, the very first thing that I did, and I'm going to go to a different sheet. You do not have a copy of this, so if you stay on page 12 in your budget book, I want to go over and explain how I calculated how much money we were going to be transferring from the public safety sales tax fund into the general fund. I wanted to make sure that this was as transparent as possible. We heard a lot of concerns from citizens, worried about supplanting, worried about us not doing what we said that we were going to do. And I went through a lot of effort trying to make sure that we were doing everything as transparent as possible. So the very first thing I did to make sure that we weren't supplanting was I came up with a base calculation, an amount of money that the general fund will always continue paying for fire and police, to show that we are not taking any money away from fire and police. What I did is I started with the fiscal year 2019 budgeted positions, salary and benefits for the first responders. The easiest way to do that was to take the local 42 employees from fire and the FOP employees from police, because we know that all of those people, no, like police, they have other employees in there. They have dispatchers. They have command staff. And I didn't want anyone saying that we were taking money from this half-cent public safety sales tax and spending it on command staff or dispatchers or anything else. You know, we promised the voters that we would be spending it on first responders. We are spending it on first responders. So I took the budgeted positions, the salaries and benefits from fiscal year 2019 for, this is the fire amount. And is that big enough? Can you guys see that? Or do you want me to make it bigger? Is it good? Okay. And then what I did is I took off $400,000. If you remember, we needed, we had to freeze positions last year. The amount of frozen positions equated $400,000 in savings from police and $400,000 in fire to balance the budget. So we had included all of the positions, but in order to balance the budget, we had to reduce each of those departments by $400,000, which was why we did the hiring freeze, which means that the general fund will always need to pay $3,155,064.21 for fire, salaries and benefits for the union employees, and $3,216,839.88 for the police. That base will never change. That goes into effect because, and will always be that amount, because that is what the budget showed the year that the public safety sales tax was passed and approved by voters. Does everybody understand why that's the base? Any questions about that?
I've got this sheet, Sheila, that we've worked on. It'd probably behoove us to have that.
That's this.
Did they have that in front of them?
That's this up here.
That's this.
No, I meant that they could look at it at home.
No.
No, I can.
We can print this off.
Yeah, I can print this off for any of you that want it. Okay, so then, so we established the base. So then what I did is I went in and I added up the salaries and benefits for all the fiscal year 20 union budgeted positions. In fire, it's $3,698,168. And in police, it's this $3,785,559.22. And then I subtracted the base. And so in fire, our salaries and benefits over that base are $542,937.47. $400,000 of that is for those frozen positions. The positions that if it had not been for the public safety sales tax, we would have had to eliminate. So $400,000 is for that, and then $142,937.47 is for the increases in salaries and benefits for those union positions. And then if you look at police, again, the total fiscal year 2020 union budgeted positions are $3,785,559.22, and the base is that $3.2 million, and that gives us $568,719.34. $400,000 of that amount is for those frozen positions. So the increase in salaries and benefits for just those union budgeted positions is $168,719.34. Now, police, we're adding 4 new positions in police, 4 new patrol officers. And so I added another $279,226.11. That is the salary and benefits budgeted for those 4 new patrol officers. And so the sales tax transfer for salaries and benefits from fire's half is $542,937.47, and for police's half is $847,945.45.
And why is the difference between the police and fire?
Because police had 4 additional officers.
Good time to ask Chief if we hired 4 new additional.
Those four will not be added in until after
April. Right.
We're currently trying to fill the 6 that were frozen. We've made an offer of employment to 1. We're dealing with the same small pool of candidates that everyone in the metropolitan area is, and so.
So Sheila, is that a cost savings there, even though we're shortfalled, and I'm not looking at it for the money, but we're still short how many policemen before we can get to the 4 or 5? We're still short 5 more officers.
Well, yes, but that's going to be in this year, and we had a lot of employees leave, a lot of long-term employees leave, and so while you might think that there's a savings, there really isn't, because we had a lot of payouts, vacation payouts, sick time payouts, and so you aren't going to necessarily see savings from those vacant positions, because we had to pay out time when those long-term employees left the initial 6.
So we've got the 5 policemen, we've got 3 firefighter vacancies right now.
We filled the 6 vacancies we had from last year.
But currently you're short.
Currently, we had 3 firefighter paramedics resign last
So
week.
for both of you, my question is then, as we look at this, I mean, what are the chances that we don't get them filled by April?
They will not be filled by April.
Won't be filled. Okay.
Fire, there's a good chance we will be filled by April.
Okay. That opens up a whole thing, and I'll come back with
Just
something.
going through the testing procedure, background procedure, the investigations that would have to be run, and then if we were to select someone next week, they'd still have to give advance notice to wherever they were leaving. So it would be virtually impossible to fill all 6 vacancies that we have right now by April 1.
Okay. Why aren't we, with fire, why aren't we getting more people? Why are we losing people?
Good questions. Some of the things that we've heard why we're losing people is they're going for more money and less call volume is the 2 big things that we're hearing from the people that are leaving. They can make more money in other areas, other fire districts, other cities. We're losing 3 to Central Jackson County, which is Blue Springs, a couple of Independents. So
All public safety jobs, there are fewer and fewer. The population does not view public service jobs the way that previous generations did. And it is, there have been studies done that show that our candidate pool is much smaller now. And there are recruitment efforts that are going on all over the country for police officers, firefighters, paramedics, dispatchers, and we're all fighting for the very small number of candidates that are out there.
Wild. Where were we on this now, Sheila?
So we had finished figuring out the amount of public safety sales tax that needed to be transferred to the general fund to cover the salaries and benefits of the first responders. So next, we also told the public that we would be using the public safety sales tax also for capital items for safety equipment for our first responders. And so in fire, you have a total of $314,750 of safety equipment that is being paid for from the public safety sales tax, or eligible to be paid for from the public safety sales tax. And in police, you have $200,000 of capital items that are eligible to be paid for from the public safety sales tax. and I have those listed here. And so if you total the salaries and benefits amount and the safety equipment, you can see that fire's total eligible expenses to be paid for with public safety sales tax dollars is $857,687.47, and police's total is $1,047,945.45. I am estimating we will not get a full year of public safety sales tax, and I'm estimating that the total amount of revenue that will come in is, let's see, $1,598,090. That is split 50-50 with police and fire, and so that leaves $799,045 for fire and $799,045 for police. So we have more expenses that are eligible than there's going to be sales tax dollars, and so the general fund will cover that shortfall if there is in fact a shortfall. Right now we're just using budgeted numbers. We will be going back and we will be putting in actual amounts at the end of the year. We want to make sure that if we have vacancies that we're not able to fill, we're not taking public safety sales tax dollars for vacancies that aren't able to be filled next year. These are just budgeted numbers. Let's say automatic CPR machines are not $29,000. Let's say that we get a bargain and we only pay $19,000 for them. We're going to take $19,000 from public safety sales tax dollars, not the $29,000 that's budgeted. Let's say that that we get more than, that we get $2 million of public safety sales tax revenue coming in, then we will only take the amount that we actually spend. And so at the end of the year, you can't do that now. We're only using budgeted numbers now, they're estimates, but we will be going back and truing up all those calculations at the end of the year. Are there any questions about this? I went through great pains to try to make it as transparent as possible and assure citizens that we are doing exactly what they asked us to do.
And you'll find that again, what she just went over on the distributions on the city managers, on her column on page 3. I was following along on those, so they're all up there, the same numbers. So you can look at that if you want to allude to it. That was the city manager's letter. You'll find that on page 3. Questions that we have on the half-cent sales tax? Okay.
And then the very last thing that we need to go over tonight is the general capital, which is the next page. I'm sorry, I don't know what page you guys are on your budget book, but it's the very next, it's Fund 14, so it's page 29. And this fund was set up when the city started getting TIF money from Y Highway Marketplace. That goes back to pay the city for certified costs. Really, this money is most likely going to be used for road improvements in the future, but it's segregated from general fund so that it doesn't get mixed up in regular general fund revenue. Southtown Plaza TIF also is paying back city certified costs. The city is taking that money and we're giving it to the TDD. The TDD actually paid for Markey Parkway there next to Menards, and we are taking that money to reimburse them for the costs that they expended there. Once that is repaid, the city will continue getting a little bit of money, and we will be reimbursed for our costs for the Nexus Trail.
Questions? Anything stand out? Okay. So that concludes this part of it. My question that I'm going to let you go with to come back to council is, again, we're talking as we go, this is just like homework. When are we going to find money to get our streets, our curbs, our stormwater. Of course, we've got the tax that's coming up in April. When are we gonna get stuff out to the public to let them know what they're gonna get? I know that you're gonna, do you have an?
For education.
Education. Do you know anything yet? Have you heard anything on the testing on the cores or anything like that?
Well, tonight we approved that contract for the
In a little bit?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Stan Tech was supposed to be last
Speaker, please. Sorry.
Stan Tech was supposed to be here last week for a couple days, but due to the weather, they went to another job, and they're gonna come back as soon as weather allows. And, the boring contractor the boring, contractor Terracon is on the agenda for later on. I mean, they're set to go within a week or two, depending on the weather.
Okay, where are we at?
Well, that concludes our budget meeting this evening. And so we're ready to go to the next item under work session, which is the rental inspection program. Dave, if you'd like to speak to this item?
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to provide the City Council with an overview of a proposed rental inspection program. I think tonight's a good time to talk about this, given the Council's earlier discussion this evening about code enforcement activities. So I think this fits in very well with that prior discussion. And I think that the rental inspection program is a positive offshoot of the City Council's priority for increased code enforcement and enhanced property maintenance activities. So at the direction of the city manager, the staff reviewed rental inspection programs with the goal of finding a program that would meet the needs of property owners and tenants and renters. And the program is designed to meet certain minimum standards of property maintenance on the exterior of buildings and the interior of buildings. Staff estimates, just for the information of the City Council, staff estimates that there are about 3,000 rental units in the city of Belton. To kick this off, we reviewed rental inspection programs in some neighboring cities, Liberty, Overland Park, Independence, and a new program in Grandview, and prepared a recommendation for the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee. And with the help of Jim Brown, our chief building official, we took information to the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee at their meetings of September 12th and September 14th. And recommended that the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee look at the Independence program as probably the best model for the city of Belton. At the conclusion of their meetings, the Code Enforcement Committee did recommend that the staff bring forward a program similar to the Independence program, which is summarized in the council communication sheet you have there. As a brief summary, key points of that Independence program that we would like to mirror in Belton are that landlords are required to have a business license on file for their rental properties. And then all rental properties we propose would be inspected every 2 years. So every other year at the renewal of your business license, a rental inspection report would be necessary to be submitted along with your renewal for your business license application. And that includes apartments, duplexes, and single-family homes occupied by renters. Now, one of the key things about this program is that the inspections are conducted by a third-party inspection company, and the property owners select that inspection company from a list prepared by the city. For example, the City of Independence has 5 or 6 property inspection companies that provide that service for their residents. The obvious advantage to having a third-party program in the City of Belton is that we do not have to fund additional inspection employees to implement that program. Our increased workload would be on the administrative side of things, making sure the program the administrative tasks are being completed in time. The private inspection company would perform inspections using a checklist that would be prepared by the city. And that checklist would be provided at the completion of the inspection to show compliance. And that inspection checklist would talk about minimum standards for public safety for heating, electrical standards, plumbing, hot water facilities, sanitary facilities, and kitchen facilities, and certain structural items such as porches and stairs and decks. At this point in time, we'd just like to introduce this program to the City Council. And again, emphasize that it's a spin-off of the council's emphasis on code enforcement. There are a lot of details that need to be worked out in the program before we could bring an ordinance back to the council for adoption, and we would strive to do that in the near future. But at this point in time, we would like to just see if the council concurs with the scope of the rental program. We would begin to do more detailed work. We need to do outreach with rental property owners and property managers in the city, do some outreach, and we would talk with property managers in the Cass County Landlord Association to explain the program and the advantages of it, and begin to get the program kicked off. So that would serve as a summary. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And Jim Brown, Chief Building Official, is here, who did a lot of work on the preliminaries of
We'll
this
let
program,
the city
too.
manager talk first, Dave.
And the city manager's here, too.
Thank you so much. Excuse me. Just as a little bit additional background, one of the things that, the reason that you're seeing this in front of you this evening is the rental inspection program has been a hot topic of conversation from the community. When we attended some of the neighborhood programs and those meetings, we received a lot of comment from the community wanting to see something like this, and kind of lends itself to what Councilman Savage said about further cleaning up the community and ensuring that the homes that people, citizens of Belton live in, whether they own the home or and in this situation a rental home, are safe and meet all the standards that for being in a healthy and safe environment. Also on that Code Enforcement Advisory Committee is Councilwoman Peak. She serves as a liaison for that. So she has been involved from the beginning, along with our building official Jim Brown and Dave Clemens, our planning and building director, in talking about what this program looks like and bringing it forward and some additional information. So she might have just a little bit of more of a detailed perspective. So I would welcome any comment from her.
Well, there was a lot of discussion during our meetings about this, a lot of pros, a lot of cons, but in the end, everybody decided that this was definitely something that Belton needed. I definitely jumped on the bandwagon with respect to the program in reviewing all the information that we had and seeing that other cities were looking at the same thing and had already put it on their books to have a program. I think for the inspection program, we've talked about codes tonight and how we've moved forward and how we've changed ordinances and things like that to get to where we are. But there's a good need, I think, for this rental inspection program to, as it's been alluded to, for the safety of a lot of the families that live in these houses, for the community, for the houses around them. If we had a program like this in place, maybe the hacienda might not have gotten near to the shape that it got into, or some other houses. So we had a person from that. We have landlords that are on this committee, 2, I think, and one of them was definitely against it, but I believe the other one, that kind of always is set across from me, was okay with it, and I believe he had like 4 rental properties, but I think that I think this would be a good thing, and I was alluding to, we had one of the people brought a person from, I think it was Kansas City, Jackson County Housing, was talking about what they had incorporated already, and was giving us a lot of input.
Wasn't she with the Cass County Landlords Association?
She was the president of that, and she was really behind this, but she worked for Jackson County or Kansas City, I don't remember which one, but everybody was finally on board after a lot of discussion, and it's I think it's a program that is going to improve and help us in clean up the areas and with the codes issues that we have, and all the new ordinances and all the new things that Codes has been able to put in place a positive, very positive thing to move forward with.
So we're gonna have lots of work sessions and things to talk about this, or how are we gonna do it?
Well, this is an introduction of the program. Based on council direction, I think we can go ahead and work on the administrative side of things and prepare an ordinance for approval and bring that back to you at some point in the future. Certainly, if the council would like another work session, talk about details, that would be fine.
Well, I'm gonna be one for that, but Councilman Trutzel.
I'm not opposed to this, but I want to draw your attention to, I think Councilman Finn and I would agree that inspections can be good and bad. In real estate, you can have an inspector come in and ask for things that are just beyond reason. Not opposed to, things that are safety, things that are realistic. But I'll give you an example. I sold a house some time back. The deck was supposedly not good, okay? The deck was weather checked. It was not smooth and nice, but structurally it was fine. They walked away from the sale, which didn't bother me. The next inspector came in, never said word one about the deck. So you have to be very careful about the inspection that you use, and then set realistic safety things that you want to consider, because I used to have Section 8 homes. I don't have any more, but Section 8 inspector came in and he wrote me up because I didn't have a screen door. I said, "You want to go to Kansas and look for screen doors in those houses over there?" There's some things there. On the other hand, he said, your gas water heater is too close to the floor in the garage. Hey, I understand that's a safety issue. We took care of that. So you need to be careful about what you ask for and who's doing the inspections, because you have to be reasonable from the landlord's standpoint and from the renter standpoint.
Chief Person.
Right now, most of these properties, the only time that they get any buddy from the city that actually looks in them is if the police officers are there on a call, or if our ambulance crew is there on a medical assist, and we happen to see what are very obvious violations. Our folks are not trained as building inspectors, but if we go into an area and it is a safety issue, we get with our city inspectors, and that's the only opportunity that they may have to look into some of those properties. And those are the kind of properties that we're actually referring to, the ones that are dangerous, where the officers and the paramedics are afraid they're going to fall through the floors, where they see bare exposed wires and pipes. And those are the kind of places that we are looking at right now, not just cosmetic issues. So
I would say that I would agree with you. Had another house for sale that when I walked in the house, I was thinking, how can anybody live here? I'll be honest with you. Fact is, the city when they did come out, the house is uninhabitable. I mean, that's how bad it was. So I'm not opposed to it, and there are places there that definitely need that consideration. And so I'm not opposed to it. I'm just saying, be careful about what we're asking for and how we go about doing it, And I'm not opposed to it. It can go both ways, and just don't make it so stringent and unrealistic that you have a problem. I have a neighbor next door that has rental houses in Kansas City, and he tells me what Kansas City requires, and I'm thinking, he jumps right on it to get it done, because he says they come by and they'll go right and write you up and fine you for the whole thing, and he'll tell me that's what it is. So it can be done, and I know that his next door neighbor, his rental property, I'm sure, are in tip-top shape. So that's just the kind of person he is. So
Isn't that the ultimate goal, is that get people to do it on their own? And I've seen a lot of that with the codes being enforced, where we're starting to tear these houses down and all that kind of thing. The whole goal is to get the people to be conscientious, that they just do it because they know that they have to do it and they should do it. So that's the ultimate goal. And then, I mean, it's I seen a lot of things happen in this city in the last year that we're way behind on. We should have been enforcing those kinds of things a long time ago. And it's still, we're just at the tip of the iceberg. We've got a long way to go, but I think we still do need to do another work session on this. Councilman Finn?
Yeah, I agree, and I agree with Councilman Trutzel over there. I mean, as long as we have a set of guidelines, a specific list of expectations that we could get, and that way our landlords have a clear understanding exactly what we're looking at and will be looking at should this program move forward. They know what the expectation is ahead of time, and so that's their grace period. And then once this starts, or when and if it does start, there's no mystery behind it, and so that way everybody's on the same page, and it will bring up the standard. It will create a safer environment, which is ultimately what I think we want for all of our.
Is this for rental
constituents.
and home? Only. Oh, rental only?
Rental only.
Okay, so I want the public to know that it's only rental property. What's the percentage of people, maybe Carolyn, you know that? How many people in Belton are rental? The number's growing,
There's about 3,000 units.
3,000 units.
3,000.
Out of how many?
12,000?
Okay, so about 25% of our abodes are rental properties. How many people in here own rental property in Belton? Oh, I didn't think anybody'd raise their hands. Anyway, good stuff. Yes, sir.
What's the estimated cost on this deal?
Well, the information we have from Independence is that their third-party inspectors charge $50 per inspection. So it just depends how many units an individual might own. And then the annual
$50 per inspection, so that'd be per in between walls in apartment complexes.
per unit, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And the inspection report have to be done every other year. And then there's the cost of the business license.
Some of the information that's produced out there available is saying the cost is, don't quote me exactly, but I want to say around $250 a year, which would definitely probably be doubled and pushed on to the renter, I would think. So it's going to be a fairly significant increase. Let me ask you directly, are you including in these rentals places like Carnegie Village and places like the nursing homes? Are you specifically, because they are all rentals, so I would assume they're all included, correct?
I guess we hadn't looked at the senior facilities, but yes, sir, I believe so. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good to know. I'll have further questions as we move forward. Thank you.
And again, I do want to point out, as the point I made earlier, that the city will prepare an inspection checklist, and all these third-party inspectors will be working from the same checklist. And we, of course, would be meeting with those individuals to qualify them to come in and work in Belton and tell them exactly what criteria on the checklist they had to meet. So we would manage the work product that those inspectors did, and to give them a checklist with some very tight guidelines. And we have prepared a conceptual checklist. And we specifically didn't put any costs in the program yet, Mr. Savage, because we don't know what those are. But we certainly will be working on that, and that'll be part of the, a more enhanced program when we come back to the council.
Well, I would think that would be quite important because, I can actually see about a $50 a month increase if you want to talk about $600 for a year.
We'll get to that.
So it is, and I understand it is something to talk about, and I do totally support codes enforcement. I think that's the direction that we ought to be headed. I think that's the direction we ought to be looking at. I'm not convinced on this deal. So I'll have more questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Have we got through that, exhausted of that, enough of that for now? Okay. So we're moving on back to getting out of the work session now, are we? Is that where we're at? Wow. Gonna close the work session this time, and now we're gonna go to the regular meeting. I'm gonna call it to order. I'd like to have Councilwoman Peak lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Davis,
Here?
Councilman Savage,
Here.
Councilman Lathrop,
Here.
Councilman Van Winkle, Councilman Trutzel,
Here.
Councilman McPherson,
Here.
Councilman Finn,
Here.
Councilwoman Davidson, Councilwoman Peak.
Here.
Okay, consent agenda. One motion, non-debatable, to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from consent agenda for discussion, separate action. Get a motion and a second?
I didn't hear a second.
Second.
Thanks.
Wow. Gonna have to get out the crowbars.
Fellas aren't wanting to move on this, huh?
Motion and a second, discussion. Councilman Savage.
If you give me a minute to turn back here, I need a correction, I think. I'm getting pretty tired, bear with me.
I understand.
On the January 15th, on the, doggone it, I'm sorry guys, I'm getting tired.
Is this the minutes?
It is approval of the minutes. It refers to a councilman as Savage, and I'd like it to be changed to, I'd like to see addressed as councilman when it's putting in here. It's what I'm set, is what's been said. Everyone else in here is councilman, or councilwoman referred to of, and in the discussion that I had, it just says Savage.
I understand completely. Can
Just
you
need to
fix that?
add councilman to the front of that, please. That would be on page 27, I think, if I can see the number.
Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Councilman Savage,
25.
that was actually a typo that should have been redacted from the minutes, so I see that, and that should not have been there.
What shouldn't
It
be
was a
there?
piece of the draft minutes that did not get deleted appropriately.
Okay. No issue, just correction is
Yeah.
all I was asking. Thank you
I
so
saw
much.
it
Whose
today
fault
about
is that?
5:30.
Who's to blame for that?
It is completely
You
me.
never make a mistake. That's why I gotta say a big deal
Well,
about it.
I will thank you, sir. Take that out.
That's good.
It's really not an issue, it's just a correction I'm asking. for,
No.
If it needed to be. Thank you.
Not supposed to be there.
Good stuff. Always exciting. Okay, any other questions or comments? Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. Moving on. I've got one of those older computers. Personal appearances, I have none. Ordinances. Before we start that this evening, we talked about the two reads, and you had told us before that, explain that again.
So the reason for the ability to do two readings of an ordinance in one meeting are, there's a provision in the charter and a provision in the code. The charter provision is section 3.13E, and it reads, every proposed ordinance shall be read by title, except emergency ordinances, in open city council meeting 2 times before final passage. First, bring to your attention that it refers to city council meeting singular, not plural, and that except emergency ordinances modifies what's to be read, not how many times it's to be read. Then there is section 2-99C of the Code of Ordinances, specifically titled One Meeting Ordinances, and it reads, any ordinance may be adopted by the city council at a single meeting upon a motion being adopted by an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members of the city council present, but in no event less than 5 such affirmative votes. So when you take that charter provision and that ordinance provision and read them together, it's clear that the city council can adopt ordinances in one meeting with 2 readings upon a 2/3 affirmative vote motion to do so. everybody.
How'd you do that? I didn't even tell you I was gonna ask you that.
Well, it's actually, you'll see my notes are from 11/15/18, because that was the first question I was asked.
Okay, so if a council member wants more time to think at it after the first reading,
Ye-
they could make a motion to,
I mean, you could vote no on the motion to do it the second time, and like in today's meeting, we have 7, so it would take 5. So if 3 council members voted no on that motion, even though it had a majority, it's not a 2/3 majority, so it would go for a reading next week, or the next city council meeting.
okay, does everybody understand that, or a question? Anybody have a question?
I can provide something in writing too. When I get going, I
What'd you
really.
call me?
Wow. Okay. So with that, A motion approving both readings of bill number 2019-03.
An ordinance amending Appendix B, Traffic Schedules, Table 6, No Parking Zones, as referenced in Chapter 13, Section 13-333, in the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri, to establish a no parking zone along Cambridge Road.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman,
Whereabouts on Cambridge Road are we talking
in
about?
front of your house. Why are we doing this? Can I allude to
I'll
that?
vote no.
Go ahead, Celia.
We're recommending from peculiar to prospect, or prospective peculiar. But we're primarily focused around the Cambridge Elementary because that's where we've seen some of the issues of cars parking and hanging over the arterial, or, and when the school traffic comes out, that area is narrow, and if there's, oncoming traffic in the other lane, a lot of the cars will stop and then wait to go. So it just, arterials are designed for moving traffic, and it slows down traffic.
From Prospect all the way to Peculiar Drive.
Yes.
Okay, because most of the parking that's a problem is over by the school coming down that hill. Those people can't get in their driveway and they're parking in the road and there's only room for one car to pass. You have to stop and get by that.
Chief Person, is that a problem for the police department at all?
I take it that the issue is particularly before and after school with the cars that are
Lined up?
waiting to pick up students. Is that what you're talking about?
No, not really.
We've had
What-
a number of.
No, this is just the other side of the school where you come down the hill and there's 3 or 4 houses across there and there's always somebody parked in the street, half in the street or half on, and the road is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass one another there. So it's a 2-lane road coming this way and you're going that way. You have to stop till the traffic clears.
It would be an issue if it was impeding traffic, or if larger vehicles, emergency vehicles like fire trucks couldn't pass through. The only concern that there might be would be that same issue that we've had in other parts of town, and that would be to make sure that once you pass no parking, that you all have the wherewithal to stick with that no parking, because there are going to be a number of citizens who have lived in those homes for 30, 40, 50 years that have single-car driveways, and they have more than one car, and there's no place else for them to park. So in the past, we have had a few times where after the council has passed no parking in a particular area, they get enough feedback from the citizenry that they go back and rescind that. So we will enforce whatever you all pass, and I would agree that on arterial streets, no parking on the street would be the preference, but just make sure that once you do this, that this is not the police department's issue, this is the council's issue, so.
Councilman Trussell?
I'm going to move to a different street for a second. I'm going to go to Kenneth. There is no parking line on that Kenneth. What we got going on right now is the placement of the sign itself is like 15 feet from the corner. So,
If I can address that, the council years ago passed no parking on Kenneth.
no, my point was, there's a car parked within that 15 feet and the corner.
That's illegal.
If the sign were down here, there'd be no parking where he's parking.
Well, why don't we take this to Public Works Committee? Let's kick it in there and then bring it back to them. That's the process we should probably utilize. But again, on Cambridge again, that's not gonna affect the people picking up the kids, is it?
No, they'll still be picking up.
Because that's a mess, I know that is. That's, at all of them,
That's not considered parking.
standing,
They-
sorry.
they're- yeah,
Yes, sir.
So, in the consideration of this, has there been any contact with any of those homes? I know it does start east of Cleveland there, I think, and drops off, starts right there, and you got some down below. Has anyone looked at what kind of hardship it's gonna put on those folks, what they would have to do, if anything, to be able to adjust and abide by this new parking law? If not, I would think that probably should be done. I don't disagree with the concept. I think it's a good concept, but kind of like to know what we're putting on people and what we might be able to do to mitigate the problem before we get there.
Well, as the chief said, and we were discussing this earlier, that he was concerned that some, the same situation we have all over town where, well, not all over town, but in some areas where they don't have enough parking and they have more vehicles. We really didn't go talk to anybody. We relied on a number of complaints. If you'd like us to, we could go back and talk, but of course, they're likely to say no, and then we need to decide, do we want to pass the no parking for safety and traffic flow, or, take in the consideration their concerns.
So a discussion is one thing. Has anyone actually drove out there and seen that this is the circumstance? There's, or is it visitors' cars? Is it the residents' cars? What's causing the issue? Has anyone done that?
Yes, our city engineer has handled a number of these complaints, and he's gone out there a number of times, and, he's noticed the same couple drivers that park on Cambridge.
Okay. Well, I believe I understand the need. I wonder if it would be a little bit better to, if we could figure out and devise a plan.
we wouldn't begin strict enforcement right off the bat. We would, there would be a grace period with some warnings and some contact before we started writing summonses in that area.
I was wondering if you give tickets tomorrow. Okay, tonight, Councilwoman Peak, that's your ward.
And I will tell you that I actually had someone call me one night on their way from Cleveland to Peculiar Drive, asking me why cars were allowed to park on that road, that they were like having to zigzag to get around the cars and stop. So this is a problem, and I have driven down that road several times, and at times there's hardly any, but at other times they're parked one after another. So and as it's been alluded to, it is an arterial road, and definitely a safety issue.
You've always been the parking monitor for the whole city, so are you gonna
Somebody's gotta do
Or are
it.
you gonna go one way or the, any other, Councilman Lathrop?
I have one of the, from Y Highway to Peculiar Drive, there's no one parks on that road. I think that should be eliminated until somebody builds on it.
It's very unlikely that cars will park on, thank you, cars will park on an arterial if there's no lots in front of it, it's undevelopable. But we looked at the entire road, instead of just doing a little piece here and there, we looked at the entirety of the road, that someday there will be development. We could restrict it, but it makes for,
Well, right now, it's not a problem, so, I don't know why we're going, every place that's got a road, we're gonna have no parking, right?
on that section, not everywhere.
Yeah.
Although some cities, they say, in their code, they say no parking on any arterials. just because of the different safety issues.
Because that road there, from Y Highway, the other way is 25, this is 35.
Right.
So, you know, I know there's parking on there, and it doesn't bother me to stop for a minute to get around them, but, you know, it's kind of a pain. But on the other one, there's nothing, and the traffic moves fairly good, so.
You couldn't do it on Cambridge from Mullen out, because it's so narrow. It's kind of scary just
Right.
2 cars going through there.
Yes, it is.
The other part is with our recent snow event, Snowmageddon, sorry.
Right.
What did that do when people park on the roads and people complained about that? Then the plows go around and
Right.
the next driveway gets buried, or I can't visualize that, but
Oh, that's.
that is a problem.
Oh, that's a big problem.
And maybe we won't have another snow. I said it real quiet. But that is a dilemma for people to have their driveways with a 12, 14-inch snow where they have to dig their way out because there was a parked car. I'm not visualizing how that works, but
Right.
it get pushed into their driveway.
Well, you know, when you plow, the snow automatically goes to the side.
Spread.
So if you remove snow in your driveway before the plow comes through, the plow is going to, you know, put more right on the edge. And, you know, if we had to stop and remove snow from every driveway, it would be very time consuming and difficult of where to put the snow. But I think it's Cimarron Trails is a prime example that they all park on the street, and it's really hard to get in there, so the plow will go in there, but it pushes snow up against the car, and then someone trying to get out has to dig their way out. Now, a lot of times they may have to go back during the day when there isn't any cars parked along the road and clean it out that way. But we try to do as best as we can with, you know, the limitations that we have.
Any other discussion, comments? Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yay.
1 nay. That motion passes.
Move for a second reading.
Second.
Motion is second for a second reading. Motion approving the second reading of bill number 2019-03.
We need a voice vote, please, on the motion for second reading.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That motion passes. Again, a motion approving the second reading of bill number 2019-03.
An ordinance amending Appendix B, Traffic Schedules, Table 6, No Parking Zones as referenced in Chapter 13, Section 13-333 in the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri, to establish a no parking zone along Cambridge Road.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Tips Hotline. Any questions about that? Seeing none. All in favor?
It's a roll call,
The
please.
roll call.
Roll call.
This is second reading?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Of A.
You're
Good
tired, too.
God.
Tired, too.
Patrick, will you nudge him?
I was thinking about it. I just got buried.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Davis.
Aye.
Councilman Finn.
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak.
Aye.
Councilman Lathrop.
No.
Councilman Trutzel.
Aye.
Councilman McPherson.
Aye.
Councilman Savage.
Aye.
Councilman Van Winkle. I'm sorry. You're not here.
Wow. That motion passes.
I think everybody's tired.
C, motion approving both readings of bill 2019-05.
B.
04.
We're gonna go to Bravo.
I'm sorry. Which one now?
04.
1904.
I was before. Okay.
You think you were tired?
An ordinance,
I'm tired.
09404.
an ordinance approving a TIPS hotline contract with the Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission.
Present.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Move for second reading.
Second.
Motion is second for a second reading. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. B, a motion approving second reading of bill number 2019-04.
An ordinance approving a TIPS hotline contract with the Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission.
Present.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. Seeing none.
Councilman Finn,
Aye.
Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak,
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel,
Aye.
Councilman McPherson,
Aye.
Councilman Savage.
Aye.
That motion passes. C, a motion approving both readings of Bill number 2019-05.
An ordinance approving the reappropriation and revision of the City of Belton fiscal year 2019 adopted city budget for the purpose of accepting Cass County funds for the Belton Senior Center.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Move for second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
That motion passes.
Who was that, please?
Councilman Savage?
Thank you.
Did you catch the one on A?
I did, thank you.
And I did say councilman before I said his name. Okay.
Well, she write it down right.
C, a motion approving the second reading of Bill number 2019-05.
An ordinance approving the reappropriation and revision of the City of Belton fiscal year 2019 adopted city budget for the purpose of accepting Cass County funds for the Belton Senior Center.
Present.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
The roll call.
Roll call.
I thought we had to vote one more time. Roll call, please.
Councilman McPherson,
Aye.
Councilman Lathrop,
Aye.
Councilman Savage,
Aye.
Councilman Finn,
Aye.
Councilwoman Peak,
Aye.
Mayor Davis,
Aye.
Councilman Trutzel.
Aye.
That motion passes. Resolutions. A, a motion approving Resolution R 2019-14.
A resolution approving the emergency snowplow services procurement contract with KMT Services LLC to provide emergency snowplow services.
Present.
Second.
Motion and second. Discussion. We talked about this one a little bit today, some of us. How did that, when we talked to you about it, what was the concern and how's that play out?
Right. Celia will supplement some of this information, but what has come to light is that we're down 5 individual staff persons in our department that helps with snowplow. So Celia came to me with concern that should we have a snowmageddon, somewhat similar to what we just had, what would we do if we were down and we didn't have the staff to be able to do that? So I said, well, let's go ahead and do a bid and get quotes back to do this. And this would be on an emergency basis only, on an as-needed basis. Currently we have 9 people that work days, 9 people that work nights. Did a phenomenal job on the last snow that we had, really helped keep it clear. But should we have a continued snow like that, where we would have to then address it and have people come in to help us while we're working on our primary and arterials, secondary roads, it would be helpful to have somebody that could come in and help clear the cul-de-sacs and things like that, so that people could get out of their driveways and clear the neighborhoods to be able to travel and get to work. So this would only be used on a true emergency basis, and we don't see a need for it, but it's in place in case something should happen. You may be questioning why we're down 5 individuals in this area. Currently, much like what we're seeing in public safety, those individuals have left for pay. We've lost at least 3 to union positions where they pay additional money, and so we're having a hard time keeping those staffed. But we're hiring right now and training those individuals. So in the interim, if we should have a large event, this would be for an emergency basis.
Questions, comments?
I think my comment would be that it's truly an emergency. I can see that. I just don't believe it's the way to go as a whole.
Oh, yeah.
So what constitutes that emergency? Down employees, trucks down, too big of snow, how much too big?
Well, it depends upon the type of snow. This
Sure.
last snow was really wet and heavy, and they had to continue to push. And had we continued with a couple more days of it, they may have got us to the point where all we could do is keep up with our main roads and our secondaries. The other part to that too is currently 9 on day and 9 on night. If we have, with this flu epidemic that's going around right now, if we we have a couple of people that end up calling in sick and we're down a couple of staff members, that could be a scenario where we're not able to keep up. We don't see that happening,
Sure.
but we just try to be proactive.
And it's not for the convenience, and that's what
Oh, no.
my concern was, and then it'd be a good time to compliment the fact that our guys have done excellent work always, which really brought me to attention here going, what are we doing and
Yeah.
why? So,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think that the mayor's cul-de-sac should be, no, I
Last.
won't even finish that one. Yeah, last.
I know, so it was
Probably
first.
so. I feel sorry for my neighbors, but that's probably true. It should probably be that way, last.
See that his was first?
But to be humble.
Oh, yeah.
And plus, we've got four-wheel drives, and we should be able to get out of there, but I do feel for the neighbors. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passed. B, a motion approving Resolution R 2019-15.
A resolution approving task agreement number 2019-1 with Terracon Consultants Incorporated to provide geotechnical services for city streets as part of the Automated Data Collection Services project in the amount of $29,384.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. City Council liaison reports, Parks not here this evening, Tree, Public Works, anything? Nobody there? Okay, Mayor's communication. I did write something down on my solid sheet here. Mayor's computer. Oh, where are we at on limbs? What are we gonna do? We canceled, Thursday, Friday, last week? So,
Due to the weather,
because a lot of people don't know still how to look on the website, so what are we saying?
The website says Thank you. For
You
some
get
reason,
pretty
I'm
good at
forgetting
that.
that tonight.
That's his only job right there.
Every Thursday and Friday, and then on Saturday. So we would only cancel, contingent on poor weather conditions. And we've been giving, the last Thursday and Friday, we got a fair amount of people dropping off.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's amazing. That's a good deal.
Some were ready to go.
So Thursday, Friday for a while.
And then if we need to open it up for more days or longer, we can do that too. It just takes, the manpower to staff it and do the work. So we're kind of seeing how this schedule works, and if we need to, we can expand.
What are we gonna do with the elderly people or people that are needy that need help to get that done? Are we gonna identify those people? I mean, that's not our job, but are we gonna do anything, or are you gonna allude to that a bit?
well, no, I think at the last meeting, Sheila actually talked about getting a hold of the neighborhood watch programs, that they were formulating volunteer groups to be able to help citizens with that project. And I've been seeing on Facebook, people have been having good luck with that, so that would be my recommendation there.
Okay. We just don't wanna forget anybody. Anything else? Mayor? No? Okay, city manager's report.
At this time, the only thing that I have for the council are the dates that are listed there in front of you, with our next meeting being on February 12th at 6 p.m., where we'll continue with budget hearing workshop.
Well, thank you. All right. We'll go to motions, please. The first motion, A motion, do you want to read those? I'm struggling a little bit, please.
A motion determining the redevelopment project described in the Belton Town Center TIF plan and submitted to the Belton City Council at the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2019, is or is not making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule contained within the approved plans for completion of such project.
Motion and second, any discussion?
You will need to pick which motion you would like, is or is not.
Is or is not.
What was that?
You'll need to
Is
select
or is
whether
not.
it is, whether you believe it is or
A
is
motion for
not
is.
making satisfactory progress.
Yes, so when you motion, you'll need to state whether it's
Or
is
is
or
not.
is not.
So whoever made the first
Is.
is. Do you want to
Thank
second
you.
that again? And it's second is, that's good. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. B,
A motion determining the redevelopment project described in the Belton Marketplace TIF plan and submitted to the Belton City Council at the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2019, is or is not making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule contained within the approved plan for completion of such project.
Present with the is.
Second.
Second with the is.
Second is, okay. Wow, any discussion?
Have fun with it.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. C,
A motion determining the redevelopment project described in the Y Highway Marketplace Tif plan and submitted to the Belton City Council at the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2019, is or is not making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule contained within the approved plans for completion of such project.
Present is.
Second. Is.
okay, the discussion, the point is that that's Price Chopper. Do we really want to say that that is okay?
My question to staff is, and I don't know this answer, and Patrick, you may be able to help, I'm not sure, is what happens if the council states that this is not meeting the appropriate progress?
I did have a conversation with Sid Douglas today, our Economic Development Council, and he stated that if it is determined that it is not making satisfactory progress, that what he would do would be to pull the development agreement and then note the deficiencies, look at the timeline, look at the funding, and then bring it back before council to determine their course of action. In the course of action.
With that, I need some direction here, council.
We spoke about it earlier, you know, as far as is this losing money for us? And over the course of time, it wouldn't pay itself back in the 23-year allotted amount of time, correct, Sheila?
Correct.
So that tells me it is not performing as it should, clearly. So that's the direction I'm leaning.
That would be correct. To further that statement, though, is that they have been coming to you and talking to you about that.
Amending it?
And by amending it and wanting to try to make some changes in that area. So I guess my question back to Sid would be, I know that he would pull that and he would look at that and ask them to come back, but at this point, the question would be, is the appropriate statement is that it is or is not, considering that you have the most current information because they have come to you within the last 60 days.
And I might add that council did vote to extend the construction timeline to May 31st of 2020.
Right.
I understand your point completely.
Yeah,
Just a little frustrated, that's all.
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Councilman,
We all are.
let's go with Councilman Trutzel, then Councilman Labor.
I'd be a little concerned about if we say no, what happens? I mean, that could be a real problem here. I don't know.
One of the options would be to declare them in default, which would be, I'm not sure of the word.
Disastrous?
Would no longer be binding on the developer to.
That's correct, and
Continue to
then-
strive to bring something in that's sales tax producing.
Absolutely, and then the city would never see the reimbursed costs.
Not,
You want to lighten me up?
So statutorily, there's no automatic, if you say it is not, something happens. It's all controlled by your development agreements that you have with these individuals. So each individual one could have a different consequence, essentially, depending on the default and remedy provisions within those development agreements. What you typically see in a TIF redevelopment agreement is that if the developer is considered to be in default, meaning they haven't progressed like they should have, met their timelines, the city has the ability to provide them notice, which we would do here in this case, and then, just like Sid suggested, they would come back and say, this is how we're trying to cure that default. So statutorily, if you say no, nothing happens. It's all just controlled by your agreements and whether or not you think that you should be saying that when, in this case, the developer has come back. And under the amendment, I think that they actually probably are progressing then in accordance with the amended redevelopment agreement.
That's what I would
Yeah,
question.
they
Carolyn?
did come back before city council on November 27th 2018, so not that long ago, and council did extend the construction timeline.
Councilman Lathrop was next.
No, I had the same question.
Same question. Councilman McPherson.
Carolyn, didn't I understand earlier that they did come to us just recently with someone to go into one of those locations? Wasn't this the one that you had mentioned?
That's correct. They do have Belton that just received their certificate of occupancy today. So from the time that they did come in on the 27th, they now do have a new tenant, although it is not, well, it is sales tax generating. It's probably not going to be huge numbers. And then they also do have some, a potential National Urgent Care Center coming in there as well. So they have made progress, and they also did get a new real estate broker.
So my point is, and this is really nice, all this dialogue. Staff, what are you recommending here tonight?
In light of the information, it probably does meet the satisfactory progress because they have come back to you, but it's more of an educational piece that of just being aware of how it is performing. So the original motion made by Councilwoman Peak that it does meet, that's the motion that you have on the floor right now. Did she get a second? Was there a second?
Yes. And we're discussing right now.
Right.
Any other discussion? Councilman Trutzel.
If these truly do come in, activity breeds activity, and the more places that are there, there's more likely that somebody else is going to come in. So it'd be nice if they were tax-paying, sales tax-paying, but they're not. So if they come in, maybe somebody else will come in, they'll see them. So I think they're trying to make an effort. And they've come in here and switched. They've lowered their rents. They've switched brokers. I think they're trying to make it. And obviously, nobody likes to not make money. So, they get money out there invested as well. So, I can't believe that we can't move forward with this. It's not the best situation, but it's what we got.
Belton is sales tax, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, it's just the urgent care that would not be. Okay.
Belton's 1,000 square feet, is that right?
That's correct.
What's the square footage available in that strip center right there?
I'll have to get back with you on the total square footage available, and let me check my notes. Okay.
And ballpark's fine, I don't need to the T.
Well, for all of the project areas,
No, just the one that's completed already, the strip center there and off
I
Price
don't.
Chopper.
I don't know that. I have total what has been completed to date, and then the total.
Okay.
But I'll get back with you on
All right,
that.
thank you, Carolyn.
Councilman Savage.
I don't see any reason that there'd be any advantage to us not to go along with the way it's presented. We've had our time to communicate. They have shown some signs of improvement. I don't see any problem not to move forward as presented.
Patrick, City Attorney. You've already explained. I want you to say, though, for the minutes, that you feel safe with go ahead and approving this evening.
I believe that the actions of the developer would show reasonable progress towards the completion of the redevelopment plan. And that is without having committed any independent investigation into the redevelopment plan, the redevelopment agreement, or what the developer's been doing. So there's some qualifiers in there.
And for the minutes, I wasn't mayor during that time. I'll say yes.
And just for the record, how many amendments have been on this project? How many amendments have we?
This is the eighth.
The eighth one.
The eighth
Okay, I
amendment.
just wanted to check and make sure we had 8.
Good point.
We have 8 amendments on this?
Yeah.
Is that do we do that a lot? 8 amendments on these projects?
No, this one is special.
It is special. It's very special. We've talked about it a lot.
Wow. Wow.
But there's a reason that we do keep amending them, and I'm going to let Sheila talk about that. But looking at me like she wants me to. So we'll never get our money back. If we declare default, I mean, at least we have a chance at this time, with it being an active TIF, of recouping some of the certified costs that the city is owed. If we default, then that chance is gone.
It's a loss, okay.
Here's something else that I think is very good to point out. When we have a TIF, it's not just the city sales tax and property taxes that are going to pay off those costs. It is also other entities that benefit from these projects that are going. So the county is also taking some of their sales tax revenue that's being generated and is going to pay for the infrastructure and these certified costs with sales tax and also with the pilots. Also, the school district, the road district, the library, the community college, and also the CID. In that TIF area, there is a CID in place. It has a 1% sales tax, and that CID is also contributing to pay off these costs. So the citizens are benefiting from that infrastructure, and other political subdivisions are helping pay those costs. If that TIF went away, then the city would have paid 100% for that infrastructure, the widening of 163rd Street. That's what got built.
Right, and that was a great improvement, so I don't deny that. So what I'm hearing is that we should go ahead and continue to amend this for the next 23 years, or until they finish that project.
And hopefully, as they...
Sorry I'm so direct about it, but you can see we've spoke about it so much, and this project's gone on for so long, and it's time to land this one right here.
Yeah, and hopefully they will bring in more businesses that are able to help accelerate those payments. And while we maybe don't get 100% of it back, we'll get most of it.
Absolutely. How do we turn up the heat on this thing then? I mean, I want results on it, and I know the people do too.
I think that we have turned up the heat by having Jay Ferguson of Ferguson Properties now be the broker. Okay. So he has had just a couple of months to work on this. I have had some contact. They are actually starting to see some progress. That lot on 58 that's next to Taco Bueno, they are having activity on that. They're having calls on that. I do think, like they said, that activity begets activity. So they're just hoping to get some people into that strip mall so it loses. I think a lot of people at this point have lost faith in the shopping center. They think that why would I want my business to go in there? So I think Jay Ferguson is trying to turn that around. I think they're talking about their rent. Talking to new people.
I'm cheering them on. I am. Yeah. I mean, I want them to succeed at this. I mean, there's no denying that. I just want to see it finished up.
Yep. I will keep you posted. I will.
Appreciate it.
I will
Thank you
meet
so
with
much.
Jay and get back with you.
Thank you.
Wow. Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
That motion passes. D.
A motion determining the redevelopment project described in the Southtown Plaza TIF plan and submitted to the Belton City Council at the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2019, is or is not making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule contained within the approved plan for completion of such project.
Present it with the is.
Second with the is.
Is.
Motion and a second with ises. Any discussion? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. E, a motion. Go ahead.
A motion determining the redevelopment project described in the Y Belton Plaza TIF plan and submitted to the Belton City Council at the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2019, is or is not making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule contained within the approved plans for completion of such project.
Present with it is. Why is it me?
Second with an is.
We have a motion and a second with an is.
I did the last.
Any discussion? That's classic. Okay. Any discussion at all? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. F.
A motion determining the redevelopment project described in the Cedar Tree TIF plan and submitted to the Belton City Council at the public hearing held on January 22nd, 2019, is or is not making satisfactory progress under the proposed time schedule contained within the approved plans for completion of such project.
Present with it is.
Second with it is.
Second with an is, motion with an is. And we've got it is. Okay. Discussion. Is discussion done? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes. So at this time, any other business? Okay. City manager?
Mayor Davis, if you wouldn't mind, due to the lateness of the hour, the item under executive session can be deferred to the February 12th meeting, and it would be my recommendation to not have executive session this evening.
So we don't have a meeting till February 12th?
Correct.
Wow. Okay. Do you want to vote on that, or do you want to just say good night? I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn? A second? Do we need to do a roll call? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion
Who
passes.
seconded that one?
Councilman Lathrop did.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. and
He usually
thank you,
makes the
folks.
motion.
With it is.